Are you ready?
We are now live.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in the playing of the national anthem and the reading of the invocation.
As we come together today, we recognize the great responsibilities that are laid upon us. Our council will always strive to understand the needs of the people we serve and to use power wisely and well. Our purpose is to establish and maintain a city of prosperity and righteousness where freedom prevails and where justice rules. Let us also not forget those who served our community and who are no longer with us, so we can continue to do the work that we must in their memory. Please be seated. Tonight, the clerking services are being provided by the city clerk, Tanya Daniels, and we also have with assistance from Melanie Figueredo. So, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councillor Vanderstel.
Present.
Councillor Utley.
Present.
Councillor Sless.
Present.
Councillor McCreary.
Here.
Councillor Martin.
Here.
Councillor Carpenter.
Here.
Councillor Antosky.
Here.
Councillor Van Tilborg.
Present.
Councillor Wall.
Present.
And Mayor Davis.
Present. So first, I'd like to discuss our rules of procedure for tonight's meeting. I'd like to remind members of council, staff, and our viewing public of the electronic public participation policy for virtual meetings. Staff and delegates are reminded to keep their video and microphones off until requested to do so by the moderator or members of council. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw otherwise apply. Further, in the event of a connection service interruption that occurs that affects quorum, we may recess the meeting for up to 15 minutes to reestablish quorum. And if that's not successful, then the meeting is adjourned. Full corporate policy 50 regarding electronic visual participation meeting is now available online to review. So we'll move into declarations of conflict of interest. I understand, Councillor Vanderbilt, you've got a conflict. You'd like to declare an item 12.3.3. That's amendments to Brantford zoning bylaw 160-90, the short-term rental accommodations bylaw. So would you please confirm and state the nature of your conflict?
Yes, I will confirm for the sixth time, I think, that we do have a conflict. My wife and I own and operate an Airbnb and intend to do so in the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So are there any other conflicts that anybody wishes to declare? Please physically raise your hand. Not seeing any physical raised hands. So we'll move on to deal with the separation of items in our committee reports for discussion. And just a reminder that resolution items 13.1 to 13.4 are dealt with individually as they're not part of the committee reports. Also, the following item 12.3.3, that's the amendment to the City of Brantford bylaw 160-90, the short-term rental accommodations. That's automatically separated because of Councillor Vanderstel's conflict, as well as item 12.4.1, the pandemic services draft 2022 budget, as there is a registered delegate for that item. So are there any other items contained within the committee reports. Anybody wishes to separate for discussion purposes? Councillor Carpenter.
12.1.5 and 12.3.3. Thank you.
Okay, so 12.1.5, that's the process review task force report.
Yes.
Yeah.
And 12.3.3 amendment City of Brantford zoning bylaw.
Sorry, 12.3.1.
No, I was going to say 12.3.3, but it's already separated. Thank you.
Yeah.
It is 12.3.2 is the one I was looking at. Sorry.
Okay. So that's a delegation of authority. Anyone else? Seeing no raised hands. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Sorry about that. Just a discussion with the city clerk trying to keep me on the straight and narrow. So then I'd like to call a vote then on the items that have not been separated for discussion purposes. So Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of all the items that are subject to the vote, and then we can proceed with the vote.
Certainly, the items subject to the vote are as follows. Committee of the Whole Operations and Administration, 12.1.1, Natural Burials. 12.1.2, Traffic Control Yield Right-of-Way Stop Signs. 12.1.3, Housekeeping Albion Street Parking Control Bylaws. 12.1.4, 2021 Ontario 55 Winter Games Recommendation for Postponement. 12.1.6, Southwest Task Force Report. 12.1.7, Winter Maintenance Update 2021 to 2022. Increase of the grant funding offered by the city for private sewer lateral lining and replacement and private lead water service replacement. 12.1.8. 12.1.9, Community Heritage and Cultural Space Task Force. From your social services agenda, 12.2.1, Live Well Brantford Brant Q2 Update and Evaluation Report. From the Committee of the Whole Community Development, 12.3.1, Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment for Linden Road. 12.3.4, City Lease of Lands and Option to Purchase to Brant Community Healthcare Systems. From your Finance Committee, 12.4.2, Amend Fees and Charges Bylaw 52-2021, Early Approval of 2022 Fees. You could just confirm who seconded the motion.
Yes, Councillor Rutley, I believe you were the mover.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor John Sless, that all items contained within the committee reports, items 12.1 to 12.4, not separated for discussion purposes, be approved.
And those have been read out. So, Madam Clerk, let's take the vote, please.
All items not separated for discussion purposes have carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, so there are no statutory hearings, recognitions of achievement, or proclamations on tonight's agenda. So we'll move right then into presentation delegations. We have two registered delegations this evening. Prior to hearing the delegations, I'd like to remind those in the meeting, attending the meeting today, the following rules of decorum applies as set forth in the city's procedural bylaw. No person shall display any sign, barrier, or placard in the meeting other than the materials that, in the opinion of the chair, are legitimate audiovisual aids necessary in connection with any presentation being made to council. All persons present shall use polite and respectful language and shall refrain from the use of any language or the making of any gesture that is disrespectful or offensive. All persons addressing council shall speak only on the subject in debate and shall not speak on any other subject. And no person shall applaud participants in debate or engage in any conversation behavior that may disrupt the proceedings of the meeting. And there are additional delegations are not permitted to address the following matters: labor relations, litigations that are expected to proceed, that's current or currently proceeding, tenders, RFPs, or other procurement matters, and any other matters properly the subject of the open meeting exceptions in the municipal act as amended. So we'll move then to our first delegation. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Earlier in today's meetings, I was told that we couldn't have virtual backgrounds, and so I was told to take my virtual background off, and I checked with the clerk to find out how that process worked, and I believe it's enacted now. Thank you.
Yeah, my understanding, good point, Councillor Carper. My understanding is that was approved at the September council meeting. It applies only to in-camera meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. But I'm glad you brought that up to clarify that. So let's move to, I believe we have Russ King from Paramedic Services and Cindy Stevenson and Heather Mifflin from the County of Brant. Would you please come forward? You're going to be, I believe, primarily answering questions regarding 12.4.1 Paramedic Services Draft 2022 budget. So would you please come forward, and even though I've already said what your names are, please state your names. And if you do that first.
Good evening to the mayor and councillors. My name is Cindy Stevenson. I'm the general manager of Community and Protective Services at the county.
Right. And Chief King, did you want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. I am Russell King, the Director of Paramedic Services for both the city and county of Brant.
Okay. And Heather?
Evening, council. I'm Heather Mifflin. I'm the treasurer for the county of Brant.
All right. So we have 10 minutes inclusive questions. And do you have a short presentation, or is it primarily you're here to answer questions because the arrangement cost sharing agreement with the county requires that?
Through you, Mayor Davis, we understand that there were some questions at the Finance Committee, and Russ has provided or prepared answers to those questions. So if you'd like, he could provide those.
Why don't we do this? If you don't have a presentation to begin with, I know that was Councillor Rutley. So why don't we have Councillor Rutley ask his questions and then you can answer them. So Councillor Rutley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Ross and Cindy and Heather. Thank you for joining us tonight. I've got 4 questions, and I don't expect all the answers tonight, but if you could provide them in the next week or 2, that would be greatly appreciated. Number 1 is, how does Brant County Emergency Service compare with other comparable municipalities? And that's a very wide open question. And I guess that's in terms of budgets, you know, the cost of operating our service compared to other municipalities. That's the main crux of what I wanted to find out with that one. Number 2, how much of the increase in calls is a result of the pandemic? So I'm sure that that's played a role in there somewhere. And there's a part 2 to that, Russ, is what percentage of calls do we get or do you receive that are drug overdose related? I'd like to understand how big a problem, big an issue that is for our community and for your staff. And again, I don't need the answers right now. And then my last question is the increased trend expected to continue in 2022 and 2023? So if we're seeing an increase in the number of calls and the lack of having enough ambulances or staff, will that trend continue? It seems like the past 5 years, we've certainly seen an increase in the service that you provide to our communities. So I'd just like to get a handle on that as well, if you'd be so kind.
Thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Utley, for the questions. I did some research with the questions, and I did watch the finance meeting that you did have. So I do have some of the questions that you're looking for right now already prepared for you. So I'm just going to read off my statement so I do not forget anything, and then I will open it up after my answer to each question if there any of the panelists have any questions or anybody from council also has them. So our service provides our paramedic service serves the community of both the city and county of Brant, which within 914 square kilometers. Our call volume is anticipated for 2021 at 25,923 calls, an overall increase of 9.5% from 2020. During the pandemic, we had experienced a decrease in our call volume, but when the provincial government relaxed the lockdown restrictions, we experienced a quick return to pre-lockdown numbers and beyond, to numbers we had never seen before. No one knew for sure what the overall effect of the pandemic life will be, but our trend of increasing calls is on track as similar years as we presented to this council and the ambulance committee. The increased call volume trends is dating back from 2015 at 8.5% to now at an overall percentage, as said, 9.5%. If you take the past 6 years, the overall average is a trend of 7.4%. The consultant's report of 2015 recommended that our call volume growth would grow approximately 6% per year, and it was suggested to add an additional 12-hour ambulance every other year to keep up with demand. Our service is running right now at 98% call capacity, and without any additional resources, it's projected to hit and exceed 100% call capacity in 2022. We've experienced over 500 code zeros, which is 500 times to date that there were no ambulances available when anyone called 911. And we've relied on our other EMS services to respond to calls 585 times with our cross-border agreement. The most recent DMA study reports from 2020, where 110 Ontario municipalities participate. In the 2020 study, there are factors that affect paramedic service costs, as you've already outlined, including geographic coverage, population density, local demographics, level of certification, and specialized services. To give you a brief example, Brant County is $64, Brantford City is $49, Norfolk is $69, Guelph is $58, Chatham-Kent is $58, and Peterborough is $59, which are comparable services to us. An average net cost per capita within the border basically is $60, or a mean average of $58. In discussions with other EMS services after your questions were posed, they've all said they've had a significant increase in call volume. In Hamilton, they are experiencing 7%, Norfolk County 8%, and Waterloo 6.8%. We attribute these increases population growth, elderly population, people delaying care during the pandemic, and the progressive disease of their illness getting worse, and more dynamic pre-existing medical conditions. Our patients are sicker and need more advanced care. That's my response to your first question, Councillor Up. Does anybody have any questions?
Other than the only question I've got is, could we get a copy of that report in a summary of some kind? My old memory doesn't recall all that information. Thank you, Russ.
No problem. I do have the responses to your second and third question when the council or the panel is ready.
All right, well, we have about 4 minutes left, so
I'll talk fast.
See if you can fit them in.
Okay. How much of the increase in call volume is a result of the pandemic? No one can predict the pandemic, our community, or any other community will get in the call volume. But what we know during the pandemic, patients delayed receiving care and did not want to go to hospital for fear of catching COVID. When they did call us, they were sicker and needed more advanced treatment. In some cases, the patients just waited too long. Now, since the releasing of restrictions, everybody is coming to you and calling us for general overall conditions and malaise. We are currently working with both the Brant County Health Unit, the county, and the city staff to provide public messaging that there are alternatives for calling 911 to not exceed our call volume any further. As our new long-term care programs and community care programs are helping to divert 911 calls within our community, these pilot projects are working. The newest one we are trying right now is having urinalysis in home care and exploring the impact on how frequent chronic conditions at home can stay out of the ER department. Without these provincially run additional programs, our call volume increase would be significantly higher. As to your question regarding overdoses, on average, we see between 30 and 40 calls a month for overdoses. That's also in the ambulance committee report. And our overall call volume right now with the current numbers are between 2,200 and 2,500. So I would say about 1% of our calls. The last part is, do we expect this trend to continue? COVID was an anomaly, I believe. Our figures from 2015, if you take COVID out of that, our call volumes will continue to increase. And we're trying to find other innovative ways, as with provincial fundings, not to put more of a burden on the overall taxpayers. Does anybody have any questions?
Russ, just want to thank you very much for this information. It's very, very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. I will send off the report and have it sent through Cindy to all the councillors on this meeting.
Thank you.
Russ, we have Councillor McCreary would like to ask you some questions. We've got about 2 minutes, so see what you can do, Councillor McCreary.
Mayor,
Good
thank
afternoon.
you and welcome, guys. Russ, could you explain your practice of having multiple ambulances attend a single call? How that happens and why?
Through you, Councillor, our dispatch center determines the overall severity of the call. The closest basic life support ambulance or the closest ambulance will go to the scene. And then if additional resources or a higher level of care, they would send it there. So for an example, if somebody was in cardiac arrest, the first group either being ALS or BLS, but additional pairs of hands, as well as the fire services have helped us in the past as well.
Isn't the fire service generally first on scene for a heart attack?
With our current stats right now, I would not know because Chief Binkley and I have been working through the COVID restrictions for the last 18 months, and they were only came to limited calls for us just because we did not want to have any additional cross contaminations.
I wonder if you could say
those figures.
Thank you. I wonder if you could say what sort of percentage of your calls involve having to have 2 crews on a single call because of the severity.
Our severity of our calls, if I pulled out our code 4, which is lights and sirens response, what I would say right now for 2 crews would probably be about 5 to 7%, if that. And then once the other crew stabilizes the patient, the other crew basically goes back into service for the 10 to 15 minutes that they are on scene.
And that's because the staff have varying degrees of training?
That is correct. We are very fortunate in the city and county of Brant that we do have advanced care paramedics. And with the advanced care paramedics, we are also able to transport these patients with heart conditions and specialized services to Hamilton for the heart cath lab, strokes, and other programs.
I wonder if you could say which would be more effective for us, to have all advanced care paramedics or to have simply more folks on the ground?
From what I've experienced over the last 21 years, we have a balance between advanced care paramedics and more feet on the ground. If we could add additional resources, it would probably be the first choice I would make.
And sorry, that wasn't all that clear, Russ. Could you say that one more time? Which is the choice you would make?
If I had to make the decision, I would make the decision of more boots on the ground currently and use our advanced care paramedic in a more specialized role.
And if you were to fully staff with advanced care paramedics, would that make up for your shortfall that you experience? You said something like 7% of the calls require a second car, rather.
Back through you, Councillor, there was an ad hoc committee back in 2005, which I was part of, and the overall recommendation at that time was that 67% of our full-time paramedics were to be ALS. Over attrition and people leaving, Currently, we're at 53%, and we are currently working towards that original number of 67% to overabundance our resources, but to balance them.
Are
Okay,
your
we'll
new
have to-
hires all
Councillor
advanced?
McCurry, we'll have to call it there. We've gone a couple of minutes more. But I want to thank the presenters very much. Russ and Cindy and Heather, very much appreciate it. It was very informative. And we will be dealing with this item not right away, but certainly earlier rather than later in the meeting, because that's what we do when we have delegations. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move into the next delegate, but before we do that, this is in respect to item 14.1, which is the creation of Indigenous Affairs Officer. And as that I'm currently listed as a notice of motion, it'll require a motion to waive the rules for it to be discussed tonight. And if that motion passes, then it makes sense that we could then hear a delegate in respect to it. But first, I think we have to formally get it on the table. So I think we'll deal first with the motion to waive. And I believe, Councillor Wall, you're ready to go with that, to read that motion to waive. You can just state your seconder as well on this.
Thank you. You want me to read the whole motion? Yes?
Yeah, you can just confirm who your seconder is.
Yeah, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dan McCurry.
Okay.
And motion to waive the rules. 14.1, creation of an Indigenous Affairs Officer position. Whereas the Corporation of the City of Brantford is neighbors to the largest Indigenous population in the country. And whereas the Corporation of the City of Brantford values its relationships with Indigenous peoples, governments, agencies, and institutions, and works to be respectful of traditions, cultures, and ways of being. And whereas reconciliation is a core value the Council commits to uphold, and whereas ongoing communication, discussion, and negotiation with the Indigenous people of this land is of great importance, and whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada published 94 calls to action, 13 of which are directed at municipal governments, and whereas a number of neighboring municipalities have developed Indigenous relations staff positions, including the City of Guelph, the City of Mississauga, and the City of London, now therefore be it resolved. A, that the Corporation of the City of Brantford immediately begin work on the creation of an Indigenous Affairs Officer position, reporting to the Office of the CAO and Mayor, and that once created, immediately begin recruitment of a qualified candidate without the need for the matter to be considered by the Human Resources Committee, and B, that the costs associated with the Indigenous Affairs Officer be included as an unavoidable increase in the 2022 operating budget.
So any discussion on this is again a motion to waive. Seeing no raised hands, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote on the motion to waive?
The motion to waive the rules has carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Carpenter, Antonsky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Martin. It did receive the required 2/3.
Great. Okay, so we'll move then on to the delegate. If we could bring Veronica Martisius in, please. Good evening, Veronica. So if you could please state your name, and then you can then speak to the item, and you have a total of 10 minutes.
Good evening, elected representatives and city staff. My name is Veronica Martisius, and I appear to you tonight as a former longtime resident of Ward 4 and a member of the Mohawk Nation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. I come from a strong line of Mohawk women and take after my great-grandmother, the late Ethel Brant Montour, the great-great-granddaughter of Tyandanega, Joseph Brant. My maternal grandfather, the late Graham Edward, was a first-generation Canadian. He and my Nana raised their children on a dairy farm on Henry Street, just around the corner from Airedale. My papa was forced to sell the farmland under threat of expropriation by the City of Brantford so Massey Ferguson could eventually expand. To this day, the land remains vacant. I am also the proud granddaughter of the late Peter Martitius and Irma Schneider. They immigrated here from Lithuania and Germany after their homelands were ravaged by war. I say all of this to illustrate how land dispossession and displacement has had an impact on my family and why I have a keen interest in land protection, especially within the Haldimand Tract, where my people, the Haudenosaunee, continue to face injustice through settler colonialism and by colonial governments that give little regard for our rights, responsibilities, and the coming phases. Brantford will always be my hometown. So what I am about to say is intended to be tough love, not an attack. Today I speak in the capacity of an individual with concerns and questions about Councillor Wall's resolution to create an Indigenous Affairs Officer. While I can appreciate the need for improved communication, I think this idea is premature and deserves careful thought and engagement. In particular, I do not think the Council should proceed in this direction until it is properly consulted with the Haudenosaunee about this matter. For too long, our voices and perspectives have gone ignored. I am asking you to abide by the principle of nothing for us without us. And for your information, consultation doesn't mean providing notification to the Six Nations Band Council office and then approving your idea anyway because you didn't receive a response within some arbitrary timeline. For a recent example of what I'm referring to, see 7.3 of report 2021-172 presented to the Committee of the Whole on October 12th, 2021. Furthermore, the timing and urgency of this resolution suggests to me that this was born in response to the reclamation and occupation at Airedale, which Councillor Antosky rightly admitted was foreseeable and avoidable. I would be remiss if I did not point out that this resolution—
Veronica, we do have a rule that says that when you come to us, you're supposed to speak to the subject matter, and the subject matter of the item on the agenda tonight is whether or not we should hire an Indigenous Affairs Officer. It's not to discuss the situation at Airedale. So would you be kind enough to focus on the topic that's in front of us tonight?
Yes, absolutely. Indigenous Affairs.
Thank you.
I would be remiss to point if I did not point out that this resolution is at odds with recent statements that have been made by the mayor and others around the issue of Indigenous land claims not being within the city's jurisdiction to resolve. This resistance and pass the buck attitude does not bode well for a resolution that is intended to further the aims of reconciliation. Institutional memory does not allow you to deny or dismiss Haudenosaunee existence or land claims. For example, in 2008, Brantford City Council adopted a resolution respecting First Nations policy. In that resolution, the city stated that it remains sympathetic to the aspirations of the First Nations to obtain redress for any past wrongs and said it would offer assistance where it can. This leads me to my next point. Reconciliation is the responsibility of all city staff and members of council, not just one Indigenous Affairs officer. With respect to Indigenous relations, the Association of Municipalities Ontario stated that municipal governments, Indigenous governments, and the federal and provincial crowns should work together to address outstanding issues impacting municipal Indigenous relations, such as the duty to consult and accommodate, and the municipal role in land claims. The city may not be able to resolve this situation, but it can choose not to sell and or develop lands it knows are under dispute. Compensation or restitution are not the only remedies to redress past wrongs. Reconciliation includes giving land back where possible. I will now address particular issues contained within the recitals, which I find generally cryptic and vague. First, the city of Brantford likes to talk in terms of being neighbors to the Six Nations Reserve. This line of thinking is problematic because it erases the fact that the city of Brantford is situated within the Haldimand Tract, where you can find our people all over. Yesterday was the 237th anniversary of the Haldimand Proclamation, whereby the Six Nations and such others of the Six Nations, whereby the Mohawks and such others of the Six Nations were granted 6 miles on either side of the Grand River to possess and to enjoy forever for compensation of our losses following the American Revolution. To put it politely, the city of Brantford is more of a guest in our territory than a neighbor. Next, truth comes before reconciliation. If you can't clearly admit whose land your city is situated upon, your attempts at reconciliation ring hollow. The largest Indigenous population you speak of happen to be the Haudenosaunee, the Six Nations. Name us. Next, based on my observations, whether the city of Brantford values its relationship with the Haudenosaunee and their ways of being remains to be seen. Until the city stops viewing our people as criminals for defending our own lands, the jury is out on that one. Next, I'm glad that you want to commit to reconciliation. However, the creation of an Indigenous Affairs officer does not signal a commitment to this value. Who do you intend to fulfill this role? Will it be somebody with knowledge and respect for the Haudenosaunee, the Haldimand Tract, and our rights and responsibilities? Or will it be someone who you expect to tell you what you want to hear in an effort to advance the city's objectives? Will this Indigenous Affairs officer be mandated to manufacture consent, or will this person be able to freely advise you that you are failing at reconciliation, or tell you that you shouldn't do something because the Haudenosaunee collectively say no? Finally, for transparency reasons, I have serious concerns around the Indigenous Affairs officer reporting to the office of the CAO and the mayor. I think this person should operate as independently as possible and be accountable to the public. If that is not possible, I fail to see the point, considering that this is supposed to be about reconciliation. In conclusion, I do not think it is appropriate for this council to move forward with this resolution until you have meaningfully consulted with the Haudenosaunee people, including the chiefs and clan mothers, to better understand the Haudenosaunee, our relationship to the lands that you conduct your business on, your legacy as a settler colonial government, and what true reconciliation requires. I agree with Councillor Wall. Peaceful, respectful, and meaningful dialogue is the way forward, but not by a process that is imposed on my people. Subject to any questions, those are my remarks. Nyawagoa for listening.
Thank you, Veronica. So we've got about a minute left. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Veronica Matisius, for coming tonight. Thank you. What should be our next step or first step?
Well, I mean, this is just my opinion, but I think that reaching out to Jock Hill, who's the secretary of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Chiefs, would be a good first step to put you in contact with the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Chiefs and clan mothers.
And the resolution tonight, should we defer that and get more clarification from the clan mothers and the Haudenosaunee on how that should go forward?
I mean, I think so, for all the reasons that I just touched on. I think that would be a good way to move forward if you're going to move forward at all with this proposal.
Thank you.
Right.
Great. There, we've just gone beyond the 10 minutes. I want to thank you very much, Veronica. We will be dealing with this item fairly early in the meeting, following our usual procedure. Thank you. So we'll move into communications. Councillor Carpenter, I understand you have the motion to receive the clerk's report of communication for October 2021.
Thank you. It's moved by myself and seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Antosky, that the clerk's report on communication for October 2021 be received.
Thank you. Any discussion on that? Seeing no raised hands, Madam Clerk, please take the vote on that.
The clerk's report on communication has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Slash, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
So Councillor Antosky will then move into minutes. I believe you got the motion on minutes.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Carpenter, that the following minutes be adopted. 11.1 Special City Council, September 28th. 11.2 Special City Council, October 12th. 11.3 Special City Council, October 14th. 11.4 Special City Council, Private and Confidential, September 28th. 11.5 Special City Council, Private and Confidential, October 12th. 11.6 Special City Council, Private and Confidential, October 14th, and that the following minutes be received. 11.7 John Noble Home Committee of Management, October 13th. 11.8 John Noble Home Committee of Management, Private and Confidential, October 13th, all in 2021.
All right, so are there any errors, omissions on the regular special council minutes or any discussion of John Noble Home Committee meeting minutes? Not seeing any raised hands. Madam Clerk, if you could take the vote on that, please.
Just confirming Councillor Carpenter was the seconder for that motion.
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes have carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Vanderstel, Utley, Slash, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
So we'll then move in to the separated items. But first we'll dispose of item 14.1 as there was a delegation for that item. So Councillor Wall, if you could please move your item 14.1 and state your seconder.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dan McCurry. 14.1, creation of an Indigenous Affairs Officer position.
And we previously read that out, so we don't think we need that read out again. All right, so the floor, excuse me, the floor is open for discussion on this.
I'll speak to that if I may.
Certainly, you're the mover, certainly.
So I want to thank the delegation for coming forward and her commentary on the motion. While I'm moving this motion, this was not entirely a creation of my own work. This was done in consultation with members of our community of all different walks of life, members of council, our staff, and just people in the community who I trust to provide me with their honest opinion. And this is it. And I want to thank everybody who had a hand in it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is anything perfect? I would disagree. Besides my wife, nothing is perfect. But I would never imagine or consider myself an expert in Indigenous affairs. We're talking about a very long history of many different peoples. I'm just not an expert in it. And as a member of this council, I rely on staff and consultants and members of the public who share their thoughts with this council on how we should lead. And we can do a better job. I think everyone would agree. We need someone who specializes in helping us work with, consult with, negotiate with, and discuss situations with the Indigenous community, with the Indigenous peoples of this land. If this needs to get deferred, I'll support it 100%, because we've waited this long, we can wait a little longer. But I don't want to wait longer. I want to engage in meaningful, respectful dialogue with everyone, not just a particular peoples, everyone. We live in a democracy where everyone has a right to have their voice heard. But when it comes to Indigenous relations, it's strained. It's difficult. There are so many people we need to engage with, consult with, and communicate with. And without somebody whose job it is to advise us of that, we could make the situation worse. I don't want to see that. I want to work with our staff to assign somebody whose responsibility it is to provide us with advice and opinion. But I also want to see us work closer with the province and the federal government and outside organizations and third parties for us all to do a better job. I don't know what the answer is. I don't. This motion was brought forth to this council for consideration so that it could be heard loud and clear that we take dealing with, working with, and discussing and negotiating with our Indigenous neighbors seriously, and that we're doing that by assigning this position. I want to hear what the rest of council has to say, but if it is the will of this council to defer it until we've had time to consult or work on it a little bit more, I'm okay with that. But ultimately it's about, as the delegate said, meaningful, respectful communication. So thanks.
Councillor Van Tilburg, you're next.
I want to thank my board mate for bringing this forward, and Councillor McCreary. Very timely. One of the things that I wanted to ask the delegate today, so I'm going to have to guess because I don't have that answer, but I do have a possible amendment that could address one of the issues to it. So I'm going to just put that out there that I have an amendment to this. This was not brought forward to be discussed tonight. Otherwise, there would have been a pre-existing 2/3 majority on it. We're discussing this tonight because a delegate has come forward and it's important enough for us to address tonight. And with the information that's been taken in, perhaps a deferral is in the cards. This would have been coming up next month regardless, because we had the notice of motion now and it would have been coming up in the next cycle. That said, I want to address a few of the points that were mentioned about who we're engaging and the intent of the delegate was to use the deferral potential to engage with the Haudenosaunee and the Confederacy and Clan Mothers. Quite frankly, I don't know if we'll be able to achieve that. And the reason I say that is that in this term, we really haven't been able to have a good dialogue, discussion, and engagement with the Six Nations Band Council. And the reason, ironically, the reason that we need this position more than anything is because we have to get this ball rolling. And the person that we assign to this is the one that's going to bring us together and have our peoples meet. I can't see it happening because it hasn't happened. I sit on task force, Huron-Otoski sits on task force, and we haven't met. I will tell you one, the shining moment we have is our collaboration on the Mohawk Lake District. There's been significant collaboration there. It is good. I know when the Clan Mothers showed up and they had all these things they wanted to bring up and say, we were able to point to a board and say, there it is. We were already at Six Nations and amongst the reserve presenting this and held meetings there. And they got to see what other people in their community had already presented, and it was right in line. And I thought that was, breakthrough moments. We don't have a lot of those though. We have not been successfully engaging. And quite frankly, this is broad. It's beyond meeting with New Credit and Six Nations. It says it's Indigenous. There's a larger, broader Indigenous community that exists around us as it is. Certainly the ones closest to us that we reside within the territories along the Haldeman Track. It's a very important relationship. But this will be that person's job to use his time. A lot of us here are part-time. We're trying to make things happen. Clearly, if you look, they haven't been happening. So one of the concerns was with regards to reporting to the mayor and the CAO. And I'm thinking, well, you asked us councillors to go and engage with the Haudenosaunee Band Council and everyone else on as our own, I would try to think for an amendment to consider when the time right, but that would be along the lines of adding the CEO, mayor, and members of council to that so that we're all included. But I wanted to explain to the presenter that this is the reason why we need this position so badly here. I mean, we needed it before. So moving on it now, I understand your reservations and your concerns. But you have to understand that this is a two-way street. I have my reservations and concerns that we won't achieve anymore if we don't get a move on this position. So I have an amendment, and we also have two speaking opportunities. Do we not, Mayor Davis?
Yes, we certainly do. So
okay, then I will lay off on the floor.
Okay, so we have Councillor Sless and Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting this evening, Mr. Mayor, and the reasons are numerous. I think it's been said many times already this evening that this is something that should have probably happened a long time ago, and it hasn't. And we are not experts on this history, and I think we need somebody coming in that can talk far more intelligently upon it than we can. I think what we heard this evening is one point of view. My, I guess, experience in attempting to deal with Six Nations there are many points of view, and there are many diverse points of view. So to take one point of view and mold everything the city does moving forward with that as the parameters, I think would be wrong. I think if we're going to consult before we do our own business, this won't happen for a very, very long time to try and get consultation with everybody on Six Nations that thinks they should be consulted. So we can throw it into outer space if we want to and send it out somewhere, and maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. We don't know, but it would be a very long, onerous task to try and consult with everybody who feels they should be consulted with. I think it's important that we move forward. Like I said at the beginning, I think it's something we should have done a long time ago, but we didn't. And I think it's time we move. I appreciate the mover and the seconder for bringing this forward, because I think, well, maybe current events have sparked this. It's not that it needed sparking, it needed fulfilling. And I think that was just the nudge that put it over the line that said, yes, we've got to do something here, because we're going down a path that we shouldn't be going down, because, as I said, we're not equipped to make those kinds of decisions. We need to bring somebody in that can represent the city of Brantford and the city of Brantford's interests and understand the interests and the, I guess, the needs and the demands of the folks that we're dealing with. And that, to me, means creating a position to do that. So having said that, I guess I'll say what I said at the beginning again. I'll be supporting this thing, and I hope it would pass, because I think it's important and it should pass. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councillor Antosky, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was one of the councillors who also said the sooner the better, should have been done forever ago. I do hear Ms. Martisius's comments, and I also don't want to delay moving things forward. I'm hopeful that those comments can be taken into regard in terms of, you know, the people that we're looking for, and that those conversations can still happen. I've been saying over and over and over again that we need to have conversations, people to people. We need to ask what is needed, what is, you know, what is going to be a win-win situation on both sides. And I agree with other councillors. Is it going to be perfect? No, but we need someone that holds the ball and moves it forward and can have a focus and keep it going and has more understanding of the complexities, and you know, really someone who can come at it from a perspective of humanity. So I understand the ask for deferral, and I haven't made my decision on that yet. It would have to, you know, I'd have to be swayed that it would benefit us to do it, because I think that we can still have these conversations with the people that we need to talk with, whatever group that's from. If it's the clan mothers, the chiefs, the band council, whoever, I agree. We haven't been very successful. We've got a couple of committees that have never met. And so we need to start fresh, but we need all of the players involved to put their cards on the table and say, how do we start with a clean sheet? Because there's some negative history for sure, and it's playing out now. So I will wait to hear. I think the sooner the better, and if we can incorporate these conversations as we move forward, then I'd be very happy about that. And I think that we should take some of those comments very seriously that were made by the delegation. Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Slice hit on a very key point. There are a lot of different opinions on the reserve. There are a lot of different groups that have conflicting opinions out there. And until they can get to the point where they're speaking with one voice, who do we talk to? If we talk to the clan mothers, we upset the elected council. If we talk to the elected council, we upset the clan mothers. If we talk to the Mohawk workers, we upset both of the previous groups, as well as every other group out there that claims they represent Six Nations. Until they can decide who speaks for them, I think this whole thing is moot point, because anyone you talk to upsets everyone else. And they have such conflicting priorities out there and conflicting ideas of what they want. It's almost impossible to have a meaningful discussion that will advance some of these issues. So I think this is an important position to have this dialogue with the Six Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit. But it's something I feel should be addressed at estimates. It's not something that we should do midterm, as this resolution attempts to do. So if there's a deferral on the floor, I'll support that. If there's a referral to estimates, I'll support that even stronger. But I won't be supporting this going forward tonight. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary, you're next.
Mayor, thank you. It's somewhat ironic that it's been suggested tonight that we should consult with folks about creating a position that will consult with folks. I think if we're going to proceed with this, we should proceed, based on what's before us tonight. I can appreciate why folks might want to refer to estimates. It's not necessarily a huge delay, but I think it's important for us to forge ahead with this. We really need to understand the outlook of the people that we should be on better terms with. And that's not, through a complete fault of our own. There's lots of blame to go around, certainly on both sides of the line. But I think it's important that we have a point of contact here who has an understanding of the culture of the folks out at Six Nations, and really a basic understanding of the cultural differences between the folks who form our government here and the folks who form the various governments out there. So, we can forge ahead here. We do need to develop a work plan. We do need to develop a job description. That's going to take a little time in any event, probably a couple of months. I say, if you want to defer it to estimates, probably not a lot of time lost, but I would like to see us proceed based on what's before us tonight. Councillor Wall is quite modest when he said he had a lot of input in this. I know he had some, but this is something he believes deeply in, and I was happy to second it for him, and I was pleased that he consulted and asked me. Thank you.
Councillor Utley, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't want to support a deferral. This is an important issue, but it's important enough that we need to do it right. And I'd like to see trying to work on an amendment here that a statement like that the City of Brantford consult with our Indigenous neighbours to discuss the creation of an Indigenous Affairs Officer to determine the role and scope of the position. I think that's got to be in there somewhere, in my opinion. And I I can't but hope that will be a challenge. Likely more so for the Indigenous groups on Six Nations. So it's, who do we deal with? And I think that's been raised before, but somehow we need to find a way to do that. But I think we need to start off with, meeting with our neighbors and say, hey, this is what we want to do. And can you help us in this regard? And I'd like to explore those conversations as before we make the decision to hire somebody. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Carpenter, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Councillor Wall for bringing this forward. I know that Councillor Antosky had mentioned this exact same thing during one of our in-camera meetings as something that we need. And I raised that same situation. We live next door to the largest reserve in the country, and we have terrible relations. That doesn't just happen. It happens because we don't try to make relations better. It's not out there. I heard one of the councillors say, they're out there. They're not out there. They're right beside you. They live across the street from you. They live in our community. First Nations, Indigenous population lives all around us, all over the city of Brantford. And then I heard someone say, oh, they need to speak with one voice. Well, that shows a lack of understanding of the culture of Indigenous population in the first place. They speak with collective voices. They consult with each other tremendously. So the one voice, that's not how it works. So how can we live so close to the largest population in the country and know so little? I'm ashamed. I really am. And someone says, what can we do? Well, the universities, the colleges, the schools, the churches, they're doing the land acknowledgement beginning in most of their meetings. We haven't even mentioned it. We don't mention the land that we're on, that it was once Haudenosaunee and the Shawnee land. We don't talk about that. We don't even acknowledge it. But universities do it all the time. We don't acknowledge it in any of our public meetings. We could just start by doing that. First of all, it's about listening. It's about listening, sitting down and listening to people, not telling them what we want them to, how they want, we want them to tell us. We have to listen to what they have to say in the first place. And that hasn't happened for some time. I've been on council for a long time, and we've broached this issue many, many times. Anytime something comes up to do with our First Nations population, we have very, very close votes. And I raised this when we tried to support Six Nations Polytechnique, University College in the city, Trades College in the city. It barely passed 6-5. We really need to say, how do we support our neighbors better? The County of Brant has a terrific relationship. Why is that? And where is ours? Where's the leadership for ours? I think it hasn't been there for some time, and we really need to correct that. Now, whether it can be corrected with an Indigenous Affairs officer, I'm not sure. I think it's a good start, but I think the Indigenous Affairs officer reporting to the CAO and the mayor, that's not good enough for me. I want the report to come to me too, as a member of council. I'm quite tired, in fact, of not having stuff come to me. I think as members of council, we all have the right to have the same information and have the information come to us. So anything that brings that forward, where we're talking better, consulting better, treating each other with more respect, you'll find my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderstel.
I think he disappeared there for a second, Mr. Mayor. Yes. Well, when we take a look at the people that we live with, work with, and play with every single day, two communities knitted together in family and friendship and understanding, those are all good points in our day and our week. Our conflict comes from unresolved differences that we cannot control, nor could we ever control. So if you're looking at the possible groups and organizations that don't connect with one another and don't communicate clearly with one voice or not, we are looking in the mirror. We have confused, conflicted reports on who we should talk to at what day of the week from which ministry that decreed what we should do, when we should do it. You know what? Ruby Montour once said to me, Vanderstel, you've got 1 foot in a canoe and 1 foot in the ship, and heaven help you, creator help you if you fall in between. And what she was trying to tell me was, yes, there are certain rules that apply to the canoe as it goes down the river alongside the ship that goes down the same river in complete and utter and total fog. Both communities do not know where they're going because we are so divided. It's like looking in a perfect mirror. The federal government doesn't give us support, direction, contacts, understanding, or time or resources to do anything about this problem that they have to manage, but won't. The provincial government won't do the same thing either. So, you know, when we're talking about all the horrible things that are happening to our community, it is because we are subject to a set of rules that have never changed in our history. And now it's being amplified by so much of the tragedy that we weren't educated on before. So before you start pointing fingers at leadership in this situation, please understand that a community has been suffering for a long period of time because of unresolved issues. So when we want to take that step forward and create a liaison position to help us better understand what our next steps are going to be, where we can go in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, to eliminate this from being a problem applying to Brantford and the tract, Brant County, and everybody in that population, everybody in that space. Let's see what we can get. Let's see who can show up and who can communicate with which bodies at what point to give us information about how we solve this together. If Haldimand County has an issue and Brant County has an issue, and there's an issue in Cambridge as well, why don't we all put our liaison officers together to try to figure out how to solve this and lobby together to try to solve this? If we don't deal with the underlying problem, all these other problems will be almost insurmountable. I say yes, bring more minds in, bring good hearts in, and try to resolve the fake differences that have been keeping us apart for so long. I'll be supporting this, and in the hopes that it turns into something better during a very difficult time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so I'll speak to this, and you know, I don't see this resolution as being, you know, the be all and the end all of, you know, we hire an Indigenous relations officer and that's reconciliation. I don't see it that way. I support it very much because it's a need. This is a support position to us in City Hall in respect to this issue that's extremely important. I mean, all of us have wanted to improve the relationship that we have with the Six Nations, and of course, don't forget the new credit as well. And it's this issue of consultation, how that's done and in what way it's done and who it's done with. That's been an ongoing dialogue in our community for at least several decades. And it does involve the higher levels of government, particularly the provincial government. But there's also a myriad of issues such as those we've seen with the Mohawk Residential School, the survivor situation, other issues like Mohawk Road, Mohawk Lake, and certainly having an Indigenous relations officer that would be devoted to that particular aspect of city operations will provide us a tremendous resource and provide us with the information and a perspective, because I could well see this person that we hire would have a particular expertise in regards to this particular issue. And it'll give us that bit of information and resource that we simply don't have right now in a really meaningful way for us. And so this is really not so much, this is not a liaison officer, this is a resource to the city. And no doubt, and I don't dispute that we should have probably done that earlier in this term, because I can see this position being extremely helpful for us. I mean, we've seen it happen. Another example would be the climate change officer. I mean, prior to that being done, we didn't really have an internal focus in terms of all our decision-making with respect to climate change. And now we're seeing that. And this is going to give us internally an advocate within the organization that'll be advocating on Indigenous issues, so that it's a much greater focus of what we do, and not just a specific issue, let's say Mohawk Road, but on all the decision-making we're doing here, that we're being sensitive to that relationship that we have with the Indigenous nations next to us, and as all those more broadly. And so, but as I said, no one should take this as, oh, we checked a box, and so now we've done what we've had to do. We've got an Indigenous Relations Officer, and so that's it. I mean, that this is the beginning, I think, to a much greater understanding, and I'm hoping that this will give us the foundation that we need to move forward with a strengthened relationship with Six Nations and the new credit. So I would prefer not that we defer this. Insofar as the reporting, I think it's really in terms of the bureaucratic, the administrative organization, that you need to have a staff person reporting to someone and a reporting relationship. But I don't have any problem. You want to clarify that would also involve reporting to council. So I think it's a great resolution, and I can enthusiastically support it. So, Councillor Wall.
Thanks. I'm going to move to amendments, but I believe Councillor Van Tilburg was first.
Councillor Wall, if you want to push that amendment for having councils added to the CAO, you can do it all at one time. If that's, or even if it's friendly.
So I just want to make sure you get to move what you want to move, and I'm just not sure. So I'll move mine first.
Let's do that.
So then I'm moving an amendment, hoping that it'll be friendly, but if not, for debate, that the first line of the amendment be changed from whereas the corporation of the city of Brantford is neighbors to the largest Indigenous population in the country, to whereas the corporation of the city of Brantford is neighbors to the Mississaugas of the Credit and Six Nations of the Grand River, the largest Indigenous population in the country.
Friendly to the seconder.
Okay, so that's friendly. We don't need to debate that. That's been incorporated.
Excellent. And then my second motion, again, hoping that it's friendly, but if not, for debate, is to add a clause C. And for clause C to read in some form or another that a copy of this motion is forwarded to the Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, MP Larry Brock, MPP Will Boma, the County of Brant, the Six Nations of the Grand River, and Mississaugas of the Credit, and any other parties that should receive a copy.
Councillor McCreary, is that?
I don't see how it could be any friendlier.
It's incorporated. Anything else, Councillor Wall?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Not seeing any further raised hands. Madam Clerk, please take the vote on this.
Oh, Mayor Davis. Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Van Tilburg, did you want to make an amendment? Sorry.
I did. Just to change clause A from office of this to the office of the CAO and mayor to office of the CAO, mayor, and council.
Okay. And seconder for that, seconded by Councillor Wall. Okay. Any discussion on?
I'm hoping that could be friendly if it's to the mover and seconder.
Okay. So Councillor Wall, is that friendly?
Yes.
Councillor McCreary, do you agree that that's?
I have a question of staff, if I may ask it at this point, Mayor. It would be a question of procedure along this change.
And that's, you need that question answered in order to determine whether you would.
Correct, yes. I wonder if staff could indicate to members of council and to those watching at home, currently which members of city staff report directly to mayor and council.
Municipal Act, if I can through Mr. Mayor, in the Municipal Act, there's myself, the CEO reports directly to council, the clerk also as well, and then last but not least, the city solicitor. There's only 3 staff members, but technically I'm the head of all the staff and the bureaucracy of the city of Brantford, but the Municipal Act clerk and solicitor do have some special privileges as well.
And do we have the latitude to make that change, Mr. Hutchings, to name another staff member that would be reporting directly to council?
Personally, on the municipal act, no, and on the bureaucracy and the way things are organized. And management structure.
Mr. Hutching, I think you went sort of silent there. Could you just kind of have another go at that, please?
Sorry, something happened there. I apologize. This is the new city hall and we're all getting through some of the bugs. Technically, again, can you ever hear me? Okay. So technically, we could do a bylaw technically to make this happen, but technically under the, as the city, as the head of the city bureaucracy, that's normally reports into my organization structure like every other position, except for, as I said, mentioned the city solicitor and the clerk.
So if I may follow up with that then.
So Councillor Curry, are you making that friendly or not?
I have another question there, which will now take me a moment to recover thanks to your interjection. So it would require a bylaw.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Carpenter.
Can you explain how the councillor is getting a third speaking opportunity to clarify so that he can, before he makes a decision?
Yeah, he's asking questions. I think it's legitimate in order to determine whether he wants to agree that it's a friendly amendment. Do you have one other question, Councillor McCurry, that has to relate directly to that and getting advice from the city staff?
Yes, I have indeed, Mayor. And my question is again to CAO Hutchings. We could have the position in question reporting to the CAO, but responsible to council by way of providing information. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's accurate.
Yep. Okay, Councillor McCurry, I think you've got the information you need. So are you going to make it friendly or not?
Having heard the answer from the CAO, no, I will not accede to that, Mayor.
Okay. All right. So Councillor Van Tilburg, I believe you put it on the floor. Did you want to make a formal amendment? So.
It's on the floor, and I'd like to make this a formal amendment. And if a bylaw is required, I'd like to say, and an appropriate bylaw be made so that the Indigenous Affairs Officer can relate to the mayor, CAO, and council at one time.
All right.
So that we're all included.
Okay. So is your amendment then that that third line that members of council are added after the word mayor? Is that it?
That's correct. And if appropriate bylaw is required, that the appropriate bylaw be drafted to make this legal.
Mayor, that's now friendly to the seconder now that the addition of the bylaw has been noted.
Then seeking another seconder.
Okay. So that's, I think Councillor Antosky seconding that. So that's the amendment. If staff could get that up, please.
Mayor, if I may jump in, I did say that with Councillor Van Tilburg's addition of the bylaw clause, that it is friendly to me as the seconder.
Okay, sorry. So it's friendly with that addition.
Misunderstood.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. Now we do. All right. So any further discussion or any amendments? So got Councillor Carpenter.
I'm not clear now after all that debate and speaking several times. Is this amendment friendly or not?
Yes, it is friendly. There's actually several that are friendly, but this last one's friendly.
Became friendly. Okay, after it wasn't, and then now it is. Okay.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, I'd like to try a referral to estimates, seeking a seconder.
Is that a referral or deferral? So do we have a seconder for that? Yeah. Not seeing a seconder.
It's not going to matter with lack of a seconder.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, would you please take the vote?
Item 14.1 has carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Til, Borgwall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Martin.
All right, so we'll now move to the next item, which, well, first of all, if we can get a motion, Councillor McCurry, if you'd read the motion to place all separate items on the from the committee reports not previously voted on to get them on the floor. So technical issue with Councillor McCurry. Could someone else move that to get these separate items on the floor? Moved by Councillor Vanderstelt, seconded by Councillor Martin. All right, so we'll move then into the first item that's been separate. That's 12.4.1, which is the Paramedic Services Draft 2022 budget. And of course, we have the delegation. So any discussion on this item? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, can take the vote on this.
Item 12.4.1 being the Paramedic Services Draft 2022 budget is carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski, Van Til, Borgwall, Mayor Davis, noting Councillor McCurry was absent at the time of the vote.
All right, so I think the next item we're dealing with is 12.1.5. I believe that's correct. That's the meeting process review task force report. I believe Councillor Carpenter, you asked for that to be separated.
Yes, this is the item where once again, councilors' rights are being usurped. There's a position on our agenda that allows council members to ask questions both at social services and at finance, and that's being taken away, and I will vote against anything that takes councilors' rights away. Thank you.
All right, so any further discussion on that? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, take the vote on that. So,
Item 12.1.5 being the meeting process review task force report has carried on a recorded vote of 7-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, Martin, and Toski, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Carpenter and Van Til.
so the next item that was separated, I believe, is 12.3.2. Delegation of authority, streamlining planning. I believe Councillor Carpenter, you asked for that to be separate.
I just wanted a separate vote on this.
Okay, any discussion on that item, 12.3.2? Councillor McCurry.
Mayor, thank you. I have now resolved my technical difficulties and I am able to participate fully again.
All right. Okay. All right, I'll call the Madam Clerk to please take the vote on that item.
Item 12.3.2 being the delegation of authority, streamlining planning processes has carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski, Van Til, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, we'll move then to item 12.3.3. This is the short-term rental accommodations, which has been separated because of Councillor Vanderstelt's conflict. So, any discussion on this? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, could you please take the vote.
Item 12.3.3 being amendments to the City of Brantford zoning bylaw 160-90 and the County of Brant zoning bylaw 61-16 for the annexed lands respecting short-term rental accommodations citywide has carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Utley, Celeste, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski Vento Borgwall. Mayor Davis noting Councillor Vanderstelt's conflict.
Right, I think that deals with the items separating the committee reports. That's correct. All right, so let's move into, we're now up to resolutions. And there's 4 resolutions on tonight's agenda. And the 13.1, which is the declaration of vacancy on City Council. I believe Councillor Vanderstelt, you're the mover. If you would please confirm that, who your seconder is, and read the resolution, please.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking for a seconder.
Councillor Utley, I think is seconding that.
Thank you. You could pop it up on the screen there, Tanya, that'd be great. Okay, declaration of a vacancy on City Council. 2021-682A, that a report titled Declaration of a Vacancy on Council be received, and B, that Council declare one office of Ward 1 Councillor vacant, and C, that staff be directed to present a report to direct November Council regarding methods to fill this vacancy.
I believe there's an amendment coming, but what I'd like to do first of all is go around and any comments anyone wishes to make in respect to Councillor Weaver and Mrs. Verba-Mentis. And if you don't mind, I'd like to make a few comments as Mayor and the head of council. You know, it's with much regret that I'll be supporting this resolution, which in effect accepts Councillor Weaver's resignation from his position as Brantford Ward 1 councillor. You know, Rick was first elected in December 2014. He's been a very respected and committed member of City Council throughout his tenure. And having been elected to 2 consecutive terms, he's led and advocated for many important projects that have benefited our community as a whole. As a cyclist, Rick championed and helped build the state-of-the-art Brantford Rotary Bike Park that's become an attraction city, not only for bicyclists, but also it's attracted visitors from across Ontario to our community. And together with his former ward mate, Larry Kings, he worked very successfully to extend the Southwest Task Force to ensure public input in regards to the North Southwest Community Center and Park. You know, Rick also, as we recall, advocating for the Vision Zero road safety in the city of Brantford, and that initiative that has its goal of 0 fatalities and injuries. And his particular interest was social services, the chair and vice chair, and in that capacity, he advanced and championed a number of important initiatives in respect to affordable housing and helping those of us, of our citizens that are most vulnerable. You know, when I look back at Rick's record, and some adjectives come to mind: committed, dependable, focused, straightforward, respectful, intelligent, passionate. You can just go on and on and on. And, you know, I'm proud that through this term, the last 3 years, I've developed a great deal of respect for Rick and highly valued his advice. You know, several weeks ago, I met with Rick and his wife, and it cleared to me that, and Rick expressed that he would, the difficulties he's having, and I can understand now that why this decision was necessary for him to preserve his health. But I can tell you that it was a very difficult decision for him because he took very seriously his responsibilities as an elected official. So in closing, I sincerely wish Rick and his wife Mia the best of best wishes as he seeks to recover his health. And I want to thank him very much for his exemplary service to citizens of Brantford. So to go around, Councillor Wall, you're next.
Thanks, Mayor Davis. Councillor Rick Weaver is a great man, caring and kind friend, and a dedicated and committed community advocate and leader. I mentioned before, he's one of the people who inspired me to want to seek a seat on City Council. I could share a ton of memories of my time with Rick. I'm going to share two real quick. My first, I was trying to put together a film project for Brantford's incredible trail system a few years back, and Rick was my contact on that. And that was just one of the things that he was very passionate, or is very passionate about. And that was when I first got to know him. And it had nothing to do with him being city councilor. It was just him being the incredible guy that he was. And he helped James and I put together this incredible project. And that was how I got to know Rick. But the first time I ever noticed Rick as a leader in this community was during the Great Flood. And he was posting these incredible live videos updating people. And at the time, I was staying in West Brant, so it was super important to me what was going on. And I just said, you know, that's a great leader right there. And I guess I wish Rick nothing but success in his life, happiness, health, and I'll end it by saying, when I grow up, I want to be like Rick Weaver.
Councillor McCreary, you're next.
Mayor, thank you very much. Rick has been a good friend. He's been a good leader on this council. He's demonstrated passion and commitment to a number of issues, as you outlined, Mayor. I first met him when he and I sat on the Trails Committee. He is a citizen and I as a council rep. And I've got to say that I saw qualities in him that turned out to be true qualities, as he demonstrated those qualities over and over again as a member of council. A team player, he and I worked together as chair and vice chair of social services, changing jobs from year to year. I've seen how he's applied his skills and his talents to getting things done. People on the other side of the camera see what we do Tuesday nights, but people don't see the work that goes into what we do. And Rick exemplified that sort of work ethic. You know, he works 10 or 12 hours a day at his day job. The rest of his time he devoted to this community in various ways, not least of which acting on behalf of the Ward 1 residents as their councillor and acting on behalf of a strong voice for those in this community that don't have a decent place to live and don't have a decent roof over their heads. And it's thanks to Rick Weaver, and I won't say solely because of Rick Weaver, because there have been a couple of other folks that have passed through our doors in the past, but without Rick Weaver, we wouldn't be embarking on the affordable housing initiatives that we are now. He secured the money, he secured the support, and the buildings that we'll build from now on, I hope will cause people to think fondly of Rick and his activities that got us there, Mayor. I'm going to miss him as a friend, as a leader on this council, as a team player, and I sure hope the best for him in his days to come.
Councillor Toski.
Thank you. I'll try not to echo a lot of what's been said. You know, a couple of the things that come to mind that most exemplify Rick to me is the word passionate and hardworking. I think we need to be reminded he did something, and others do this too, but he did this on top of a full-time job. And he was a councillor who could look at things from a different perspective and find creative solutions that maybe had not been thought about before. And it's no secret that Rick and I sat on opposite sides of some votes, and that's our job. And we should be able to do that with respect and still recognize, you know, the importance and the greatness of what he did to serve the city. And I have a great deal of respect for that. And I know that sometimes it's harder than others to separate decisions at this table from who the person is. And I think that we all have a great deal of respect for Rick. He will be missed around the table. He is a consummate volunteer for the community, was before he was on council and was while he was on council. And he helped anybody that asked for the help. He was always there and willing, and that's the kind of citizen we want coming forward to this table, that really is engaged and involved on the ground. And so I too will miss him. And we certainly had some lots of positive impacts brought by his work with us. Thank you.
Councillor Rutley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rick, I hope you're looking in. We started or Rick started his career around Westcast. He was a young employee. He was hired on production, and it was soon recognized with his enthusiasm and drive. That was recognized early, and he was offered promotion as a supervisor in at least one department. And I think that followed Rick from his very early days through to his career in the Ministry of Labour, and also as a councillor. I had the great pleasure of sitting next to Rick on council, and we got to know each other a little bit. And he often asked for advice, and I often asked him for advice, especially when it came to technology. He was just an absolute wizard in getting me out of trouble with my laptop. So I thank you for that, Rick, and our good conversations. I wish you and Anne-Marie a healthy and happy future, and I very much look forward to you being back into good health and enjoying life again, and getting back to your cycling and all the other exciting things that you do. All the very best, Rick.
Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's hard to speak 54th in a lineup and have something new to say, but Rick was a very unique individual. He really concerned himself with social issues, and I think that came through loud and clear. Between the environment and social issues, that pretty well encapsulated his focus, the desire he had to make things better, and he was very good at doing better. I think we all know Rick from sitting around the table as being straightforward, at times very abrupt, but for a good reason, because in his mind he was totally right, and most of the time he probably was. But I think I enjoyed Rick's company. I got to spend some time with him in Quebec City at an FCM conference, and I can tell you he wasn't that serious, quiet fellow when he gets out socially. He knew how to tear it up out there, and he was having a good time. And it was good to see, because someone like Rick, who is so focused and straight-laced and forward-looking, you don't expect to have that type of escape once he gets out of that suit and into another world. And Rick could make that transition very good. And I think that will bode him well in the future. I certainly hope that I've had a couple of chats with Rick since he's had his leave. And I really hope that everything works out well in the future, and that him and Mia can get things back to the way they would like them. And I know they look quite often out to Eastern Canada. I think that's been a life's dream, that they can settle out there at some point for retirement. And I wish them well with that, because I'm sure with his focus and dedication that he will make that happen, and it will become a reality. So Rick, again, if you are listening, it was a pleasure knowing you. Ward 1 is poor without you, and this council is poor not having you as one of its own. So good luck, Rick. We're all thinking of you, and we're all rooting for you. So get on your feet real quick. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councillor Vanderstel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Larry Kings, my former ward mate, pointed at Rick at a Schellers Neighborhood Association meeting in early term, my last term of council, and said, "There's your next leader." And Larry was right. He knew it, he saw it, he understood it, and he's right. Rick is a leader. He's a leader in his community. He's a leader in advocating for people who require advocacy. You know, a rock solid, devoted husband, a good friend to so many people. Now, when over the 4 years following that first introduction and the 4 years following after that, Rick and I kept in touch. The election happened, the results came out, and I don't know what happened. We were fine, and then we started meshing gears and bumping heads. And I thank the mayor for coming forward and sitting us down and helping us understand that although we both speak English, we were speaking different dialects, but focused on the same goals. And after understanding that, you know, there is a point in time in almost every relationship that you share with somebody that your nonverbal communication works extremely well. And that I was so lucky to be on the receiving end of the rough edges of Rick, but then get closer to the man he truly is and being able to communicate with him day or night. And what I saw then was the sheer determination and the raw, the gut-wrenching raw dedication to solving problems and to creating action items out of a messy situation. So when I saw that dedication to people and to problem solving and to building our community better than it once was, I back it up 100%. And it's heartbreaking to see that there's a loss here. There's a loss to the community. There's a loss to the many charities. There's a loss of a leader for now. I say for now because I truly believe that that is possible again in another community and another time. And I wish Rick and Mia all the best. I will miss him terribly on this council. Thank you, Mr.
Mayor. Councillor Van Tilburg, you're next.
Wow, I had a conversation with Mia one time when a little private time. I actually don't know where Rick was. But it come down to this, when I was speaking with her, I said to her, Rick is one of the smartest men I've ever met. Don't go into a meeting unprepared if you're meeting against Rick. And if you are going into a meeting with Rick, he is very prepared. And what this man did for his ward and for our community as a whole in a very short period of time, amidst bureaucracies that move very slowly, the goals that Rick set and the goals that he achieved, whether it was in poverty activism, he was big on having a living wage. He was big on universal income. He was big on taking on payday loans. He joined with me on temp agencies. He was pro-labor and he was pro-community. And man, it was great to work with him. And I'll tell you, there are times when ward issues have opposite effects and you had a tiger on your side, and sometimes that tiger gets bitten and those claws can be sharp when they're coming back at you. But I'll tell you what, you shake it off and you meet together and all is good. So that's what it was like with Rick. Again, his accomplishments in such a very short period of time are going to be with our community for a very long time. And I believe that's also true, that we will see Rick back and picking up where he left off and going just as fast. It was a pleasure. Rick, I hope you're watching. Everybody here will probably say they had their differences with you at one time or another. Man, that's your passion. And I miss you, bud. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, you're next.
Thank you. It's not reflected in the resolution, but I think it was reflected in the report that his resignation is received with regret. And I think everybody on council feels that way. We all liked Rick, and it's unfortunate that his health prevented him from finishing his term. I know I would have liked to have seen him finish his term. There have been times when I've been on the opposite side of a vote with Rick. And with Rick, he never compromised his principles. You knew that if he was voting a certain way, it's because he believed it. There was never politics involved. It was always his principles, and I always respected him for that. And he had respect for others that were on the opposite side of a vote if their position was a principled position. And it's unfortunate that he's no longer going to be serving on this term of council. I wish him all the best with his health. I hope that he recovers completely. And whatever he decides to do with his life once his health is back, I wish him well in that as well. Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, elections come and go, and politicians either don't run or aren't reelected. And we don't get to give the platitudes and say the goodbyes or how we felt about them. When they force to step down for health reasons, we have this opportunity, which I think is good. But I don't want to repeat what everyone else has said about Rick, but I want to say thank you to Mia. You know, every one of us around this table know that you don't do this job without the support of your family and spouse. And I also, Mia had to give great sacrifice for Rick, and she is his partner and continues to be his supporter. And I know that Rick came up to the neighborhood association, so we thank you to Shelters Lane Neighborhood Association. We had two councillors that come up for the neighborhood association on this council, Councillor Antosky and Councillor Weaver, both excellent people because they came to the neighborhood association, I think. And I think Rick's passion on the neighborhood association didn't waver. I think Mia took up that passion when he was on council. I know she did. The neighborhood association was second to none. It was the brand that was similar to the brand of the neighborhood association of Ward 4, very active. And that was a result of Rick's involvement. You know, I had the opportunity to meet with Rick and Mia at a Waterways dinner where we talked about the social aspect of Rick and Mia. I kind of thought that people like Rick, like I do my ward mate Antosky, I believe that they're destined for greater things. I said to Rick, I think one day you'll be an MPP or an MP. We need people that understand municipal politics at that level because they understand what's important about community. And Rick was certainly a stalwart for his constituents, as are all neighborhood association councillors that come up through they really recognize the importance of representing their constituents. And I see that in every one of them. And I was very proud that he did that. I was happy to serve on committees with Rick and his passion for social justice. And he will be missed. It reminds me of the same to his ward mate. I understand how you feel. I was there when Councillor Bell had to step down for health reasons, and we appointed the runner-up at that time. But same situation. You lose a ward mate, someone that you were hoping to finish the term with. It's difficult. So just to Rick, I wish him all the best, to him and Mia. I hope they enjoy the life. I hope they do get that dream out east. I'm sure they will. But I just want to thank him for his service because this job isn't easy, even at the best of times. And I know the sacrifices that both him and Mia made. So thank you.
I think everybody's had a chance to comment and understand, Councillor McCreary, that you have an amendment.
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. It'll just take me a moment to call this up. I'm bringing the amendment with the assistance of Councillor Vanderstelt, who is the seconder and co-author. Let me proceed and read that for you now, Mayor. The amendment reads that item 13.1 clause C be struck and replaced with the following: that the city clerk be directed to, number one, not proceed with a by-election due to the regular municipal election being only 12 months from execution and the approximate $150,000 in expenses that would be incurred. Number two, that the clerk be directed to advertise the Ward 1 councillor vacancy on the city's website, social media, and local media, and request applications to be submitted to the city clerk by 2 p.m. on November the 19th in the form of a nomination paper, Form 1, which is a public document. Item B, endorsement of nomination, Form 2, which is a public document. Council vacancy resume, which is a public document, and valid government issued identification, which will be held private and confidential. And item 3, to to prepare a December 11th, 0900 special city council meeting where the following procedures shall be used, and that's a Saturday. A, delegations will be permitted for certified candidates in the form of an invitation from the clerk, who will place candidates in random speaking sequence order, and each candidate appearing will be limited to 5 minutes of speaking time each without questions from members of council to the candidates. And item B, should the candidate wish to withdraw his or her name, the deadline shall be 9 a.m. the day prior to the special city council meeting. Item 4, that the clerk be directed to execute during the special city council meeting the following voting process. A, members will vote openly in a blind vote fashion, in that names of council members will not be displayed. Members will vote for one candidate only, that's clause B. Clause C, the candidates' names are to be displayed in alphabetical order by last name by the city clerk for voting purposes. D, if on the first ballot a candidate receives greater than 50% of the votes from members of council present, that candidate shall fill the vacancy. E, if on the first ballot no candidate receives greater than 50% of the votes from the members of council present, then the candidate who received the fewest number of votes and the candidates with 0 votes will be dropped from subsequent voting. Item 2, another vote will then be taken with the remaining candidates. And item 3, the process outlined above will continue until the candidate receives greater than 50% of the votes from members of council present. And item F, should a tie occur on the final 2 candidates, the clerk shall draw a name from a hat. In D, and following the voting process, a bylaw shall be presented to council confirming the appointment to fill the vacancy at the December 11th special council meeting. And Mayor, I'll offer some comment on this as well. It's the municipal council which is tasked by the Ontario Municipal Act to be responsible for making the decision about filling vacancies on council.
Point of order, please.
2 methods are available. First of all, the council may choose to hold a by-election, which is indicated in the resolution is expensive, time-consuming, and narrows the amount of time that the candidate would have to spend in the position once affirmed.
Point of order.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Carpenter, point of order.
Yes, I would ask that you rule that this amendment is contrary to the original resolution C, which is directing staff to bring back a report in November, and this is completely contrary to that. So I ask that you rule the amendment out of order at this time.
No, I don't think it's contrary. It's simply replacing it. So
Then I challenge the chair.
Sorry. All right, so you challenge the chair.
Yes.
So, Madam Clerk, I know we don't have the bylaw yet for the new procedure on this, but I think we proceed to have a vote. And so the vote would be yes if you sustain the ruling of the chair, and no would mean that you support the challenge and that the amendment's improper. So.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll proceed with the vote for the motion that's before you, would be that the ruling of the chair be sustained.
Could you clarify again which way each vote means? What's the yes and what's a no?
Yeah, so yes means that you sustain my ruling that the amendment's in order. No would be that no, you disagree with the chair, that you think it is not in order.
Councillor Carpenter and Councillor Wall, we're just waiting your responses.
Yeah, my system has crashed. I vote yes.
I will mark you as yes to the chair, sorry, the chair's decision being sustained. The decision of the chair has been sustained on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter and Antosky.
Councillor McCurry, would you please continue with your comments?
Mayor, yes, thank you very much. And thank you for your ruling. And thank you to committee for sustaining the ruling. Clearly, it's the right thing to have done. So what's before us then is outlining a process by which we will fulfill our responsibility to fill that vacancy. Okay. Resolution says we will not subject the public to an additional expense of $150,000 for a by-election, nor will we drag this out when there's a definite need to fill this vacancy. Councillor Vanderstelt has forged on as long as he should alone without assistance of a co-councillor. So the Act does not prescribe or prescribe how we must undertake this. There have been occurrences in past where we have done the same process, where we have sought applications from the public, and then the council has made a choice amongst the applicants. There has also been an occasion in the past where we appointed the third place finisher, which is our right as well. You'll be told tonight that that is how we've always done it, and that is completely inaccurate. We have done it in a number of different ways throughout the living history of this council. So we're not varying from anything. We're not breaking with tradition. We're simply doing what's available to us to do in a timely fashion. We will be receiving applications from anyone in this community who is interested, and they will all be treated equally in the eyes of this council. Once the closing date has arrived, Mayor, staff will go through and they'll make sure that each of the applicants is eligible to be elected to this position, namely that they own or rent property within the municipality, and that they have obtained 25 signatures of similarly eligible electors in this city. So council will then hear 5 minutes of speaking opportunity for each of these folks. We will then make our choice without questioning, without any sort of direct interaction. And I think it's most important to note that it will be a blind vote. And I think that's very, very important, Mayor, because those of us who will be forced to make a decision to find somebody to fill the vacancy will also have to work with the individual who is selected. And I think it's important that everybody has sort of a blank slate going forwards. In closing, Mayor, we're doing what we're required to do. The resolution speaks to what we can do, and the dates speak to the need to do this in a fairly timely fashion. And in answer to the challenge, it's not contrary to what was before us today. We are simply striking one clause that would call for a report and instead bringing forward a resolution tonight. And I would like to thank my co-author, Councillor Vanderstelt, the mayor for his input, and most notably Tanya Daniels, who is a godsend in terms of helping us frame this in a proper fashion. A lot of research involved in terms of what's going on in other communities. City of Hamilton, for instance, is doing pretty much the very same thing that we're doing to fill their Ward 5 seat. So I would hope that all members of this committee would be supportive of this tonight, to look forward to this process and the engagement of the public in finding a successor to Councillor Weaver. And hopefully whoever we choose will be able to at least partly fill those big shoes, Mayor.
Councillor Franceschi, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with most of what Councillor McCurry has said this evening. However, here's where I have some issues with this. This is a pretty big amendment to a really important issue that came to us a little over an hour before the meeting. And it is our right to fill it as we see fit. And the original resolution came to us, kind of outlining the various ways that we could do that. So I don't really understand the need to take those choices away from us before we've debated them and talked about them. And I'm not swayed by the fact that other communities have done it a certain way. We're rated 29 out of 32 in a democracy index. And in my opinion, we're being recommended to take the route that lacks the most democracy. We have the two that reflect democracy is, a by-election, which I agree is very expensive. And the other is to take the next person in line, which is who was voted for by the public, who campaigned for months, who sat through debates, as opposed to listening to however many applicants there are for 5 minutes, and then council makes the decision on who sits here, not the public, not the residents. I really struggle with this from a democratic perspective. So I will not be supporting this. You know, democracy is messy sometimes, and sometimes you don't like the options, but I still think you have to look at it the fairest way for our community. Thank you.
All right. Sorry. Councillor Martin, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important that we get the best candidate quickly, and I think ideally it would be somebody that has some previous council experience, because with a year left in the term, there isn't going to be much of a chance for someone who is not familiar with council procedures to learn and figure out how things happen here. They'll just get things figured out and we'll be into an election. So I think one of the things that should be asked of potential candidates is if they're going to run, because ideally it should be somebody who doesn't plan on running again. But that's, I don't know if that's going to be part of the application process or not. But the last time we had a vacancy, we did fill it with the 3rd place finisher. At the time, I argued against that because they were also the last place finisher. Essentially, the voters said they didn't want that individual to be their council representative, and we went ahead and put them on council. So I think this is the better way to go. I think this is give us a better chance of getting someone who will do the work and will at least try to fill Councillor Weaver's shoes. We know with 1 year to go in the term that won't be possible, but at least they can work in the right direction. And hopefully someone who is willing to work with their ward mate, Councillor Vanderstel. I've been lucky. I've always had excellent ward mates to work with. Not everybody is so fortunate, but it's something I've reflected on as very beneficial to my time on council. And I think that's important for Councillor Vanderstel to have someone he can work with for the final year of this term. Thank you. You're on mute, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Sless, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that I was thinking along the same line as Councillor Martin, and that is, I think we need a short-term person to come in and fill a vacancy before the public can land on somebody that they want to vote in. If I guess when I look at it, if somebody came third, it was for a reason, because they wanted 2 other people to represent them. But what I think and what I would be looking for, assuming this passes, if it does pass, I would be looking for somebody who has experience and for somebody who has no interest in running in the future in the next election. I think that opens it up to everybody and gives nobody an unfair advantage going into the next election. So to me, it's a very appropriate way to do this. I know it's been done before. It was because of it happening before that I got elected. It was Bob Taylor got appointed when Brad Ward got elected to member of provincial parliament. And Bob Taylor, who at the time I believe was on the PUC, applied for the position, had some municipal experience, and got appointed to the position. So I agree with this process. I think it's a fair process. It gives us an interim person to fill the position, and then the election will decide who becomes the permanent replacement for Councillor Weaver. So I'll be supporting this, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wall, you're next.
Thank you. To the clerk, what is the requirement? What are the requirements for somebody who wants to be a city councillor?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wall, you need to be an eligible elector.
Sorry, could you elaborate on that?
Certainly. So it's a resident of City of Brantford, either by way of ownership or tenant of land, or a spouse of someone that owns or leases land, a Canadian citizen, 18 years of age, and not prevented from another law to hold office or vote.
And is that articulated in this? I'm just asking, I know I can probably read it myself. I'm just confirming that that is somehow in this.
So that's under the Municipal Elections Act, the requirement to be an elector. And by certifying, similar to what we would have done, actually mirroring exactly what we would have done in 2018 when we certified all the candidates, that's the process. So we ensure, that's why we collect their identification, we ensure they're an eligible elector, and then we would be able to present that information by way of their nomination paper, the endorsements, which require 25 signatures, and then a resume that would be tailored to be speaking of their council vacancy filling role.
So beyond the fact that this wouldn't go out to a public vote, the person who could potentially fill this spot would have had the same rigorous process that we all had to earn this spot.
Through the mayor, in the absence of a by-election, yes, we looked at language that would mirror what the candidates of 2018 would have produced in order to have their names placed on a ballot. The difference here is that a ballot process will happen by way of the council members versus the public.
So we just had an election, a federal one, and there was a lot of criticism from the public on its necessity. There was a lot of criticism from the public on having an election while we're still in a pandemic. There was a lot of criticism just in general about that election, but that's the democratic way. I'm wondering, because, the first clause, not to proceed with a by-election due to a regular municipal election being only 12 months and the approximate cost of $150,000. How was that number determined? So if we didn't do this, if we did have a by-election, we're talking about spending nearly $150,000 to elect somebody and then doing it all again in less, like that's a tough pill to swallow for our taxpayers. Where did that number come from? And why would it cost so much?
So through the mayor, just looking at what it costs to produce a portion of an election, and noting also that there would be increased expenses because we are during a pandemic. So there would be items that would be required and processes that would need to be undertaken that wouldn't necessarily have occurred in 2018. This is a high level estimate, as you would range somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000. I can say that the Cambridge by-election cost them a very similar amount, and that was done just last year in 2020. So noting, this would be my third election that I have worked for the city of Brantford on behalf of. So taking that knowledge in combination with what I know about Cambridge experience in a by-election during a pandemic, that was the number that I approximated for your costs for the city of Brantford.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Okay, so I have every intention of supporting this. I guess I'm looking at the third clause, prepare a December 11th, 9 a.m. special city council meeting with the following procedures shall be used. For that meeting, I would like to see some sort of guarantee that that meeting would be as absolutely, positively, possibly public, televised, live streamed, Facebook Live. Like, I want everyone who is in any way, shape, or form remotely interested in who fills this vacancy to be able to view, but I don't see anything in this that would allow the public to participate. And I think for me to support this, there has to be a portion where there can be public delegations who could speak. And I don't see that in here unless I'm incorrect. So is there a way to work with our partners at Rogers and with our communications department to have this process not only live streamed to YouTube, but through other forms of social media, as well as can we add a public consultation or a public delegation component? Because right now it says delegations will only be permitted for certified candidates in the form of an invitation from the clerk.
Yes, the staff can get an answer to those two questions, if that's possible.
Certainly. So through the mayor, I'll start with the broadcasting. Certainly all of our meetings right now are broadcasted on our city's YouTube. While I have no control over whether Rogers chooses to broadcast, I can certainly reach out and solicit their feedback on whether they would be available and whether they would be willing to broadcast it. I can work with communications and any other broad display of the meeting in any shape or form that they would feel is appropriate and able to execute. So that would be what I would comment on for the broadcasting. As for the delegations, and looking at the processes that were undertaken both in Barrie and in Hamilton, the delegation portion was really restricted to those that were candidates. So it's more of coming and presenting for 5 minutes to council their lack of a better way of explaining it, their elevator pitch. So they're going to then come to you, provide some information, and then the vote comes down to the members of the public, or sorry, the members of council and not the members of the public. Certainly, this is an amendment before council. So should there wish to be a change to that, that would be in the body's hands.
I think you've just about hit your 4 minutes, Councillor Well.
This is my last opportunity, right? Because you only get one chance to talk to this, or?
No, you get 2 chances.
Okay, well, let me compile my thoughts.
Okay. All right, so let's see.
Thank you.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you. As my ward mate said, we received this amendment at 5:05, 55 minutes before this council meeting started. Why would that be? This is a pretty lengthy amendment and worked on by staff and 2 councillors, and the mayor was even involved. And why are we as councillors finding out at the 12th hour? It concerns me. It concerns me deeply. And I'll tell you why. A friend of mine approached me a week ago and said, if Councillor Weaver steps down, this was before I knew Councillor Weaver was stepping down, will you appoint me to the vacancy? And of course, I said, no, I would not, because I would my position would be to appoint the runner-up, the person that actually ran for office in that particular ward. My concern with this whole process is the blind vote and this idea that we're going to be transparent. How can we be transparent? We've got a blind vote. My concern is that there is already people lobbying members of council for this spot. The person that lobbied me has many other friends on this council. And I'm concerned I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that person's name in an envelope and I'm going to give it to the expositor sealed. And after the decision is made, they can then open it and just see. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am. But my concern is this process may be designed to pick someone, maybe who you favor, as opposed to who, because it's nothing to do with who the constituents of Ward 1 want. We're not even going to consider their options because they exercise their option by having a third candidate. And I want to say to the public, well, let me say to staff first. Staff, did we get an email from the third runner-up in the Ward 1 candidate race telling us that he would be willing to stand? Ms. Daniels?
So through Mayor Davis to Councillor Carpenter, yes, there was an email that was circulated to council members from the third runner from 2018 municipal election.
Sure. And all members of council got this, and then the amendment shows up. Maybe this guy isn't your favorite person. I don't know. I don't know him that well. I just know that he ran for office, knocked on doors, and got a significant amount of votes.
Mayor, a point of privilege. I don't appreciate, and I'm sure the seconder does not appreciate, the allegations which are directed specifically against us, the originator of this resolution. And I think I'd be looking to get an apology.
State the allegations then.
I'd like to get an apology, Mayor.
State the allegations. I have the floor.
Mayor, you're muted.
Yeah, so that would be an appropriate, Councillor Carpenter. But I'd ask you withdraw those allegations, please.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McCreary did not withdraw his last time when you asked him either. I just going to say I got concerns about this process. And the other thing that I have concern about, and we should all be concerned about, this is happening tonight. This amendment is coming tonight. There isn't sober second thought here. There isn't a chance for someone to say, for the public to say whether they agree with this or not, because it's council meeting. This amendment will make this the law. This is what will happen. And then on December 11th, whatever happens on that day that becomes law that particular day. There isn't any sober second thought. The public is not even being considered here. I'm very concerned that this council is not considering what the public's opinion is at all. Thank you.
You're still on mute, Mayor.
Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to clarify a couple of things and maybe seek some clarification somewhere along the line. So to be clear, I would be very unlikely to support a by-election for all of the reasons stated. What I take umbrage with is that choice being taken away from me before we even get to debate and talk about all of the different options that were presented to us in the original motion. And for me, this is not about the individuals. This is not about the people. This is about the process. So I'm hearing things, I heard from our clerk what the qualifications are in terms of being able to run, but then I'm hearing things about, well, we want someone that's got council experience, but doesn't necessarily want to stay. In theory, what do we do if nobody comes forward like that? Then we're back to maybe somebody we don't know, somebody that is in the same stead as maybe the third person that ran, except that they ran for council. They put their name forward and went through the whole process.
Mayor, a point of clarification, council experience is not cited in the resolution and it's not given at all. And if council members speak about that being a determining factor in their vote, that's their opinion, but it's not in the resolution before us.
Yeah, I think that's correct, Councillor Antosky. That would be a personal view or opinion of an individual councillor.
Fair. I'm not saying it's in the resolution, but it's all of us that's going to be making the vote. So we do talk about, our thought processes as we go through these things. Also, somebody that could work with their ward mate. Well, of course, we all want somebody that can work with our ward mate, but how do we determine that with listening to everybody for 5 minutes? How do we know that, right? We don't know. The bottom line is we are taking a democratic process and we, council, is making the vote. I cannot see how that makes sense. I don't understand it. If this is how we see democracy, we might be looking to fill my space as well.
Okay, Councillor Bannister.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it opens the door wide open. How many of you live in the wards that you serve? How many of you day after day make decisions based on the good of the entire city and not just your wards? How representative of this community that we live in is the color of our skin or our gender? Think about that for a second. One woman on council. Thank you, Councillor Antosky, for your continued presence and hard work. But one woman on council. I'm pretty sure we all identify as being Caucasian, but that's not a representation of many parts of the city, nor is it a representation of the population of Ward 1. That is changing. I say this blows the door off and opens this public discussion in a public framework, in a public manner, to everyone who has an interest in serving. And not only does it respect the wishes of the public that we don't spend an exorbitant amount of money before we expend again in a year. We all saw how that backlash happened with the federal election. What this does is opens the door to anybody who has an inclination that they may be able to serve. And it sets in place a transparent process, albeit the votes might not be transparent. I certainly wouldn't want to, in my situation, have being found to vote against who would be my future ward mate. That would put me in a very uncomfortable situation, as you can well imagine would happen to you if the results of the vote were made public. So from my perspective, keeping that vote as it is described in the resolution serves that purpose quite well. I would like to think that I could work with anybody. And as my last diatribe would explain, even being at odds with somebody, you can find a way to work together. If anything else, I think this expands the democratic process. You know, if I've heard statements that I'm concerned that this council doesn't listen to, or, you know, doesn't care about what people have already chosen in the past. Well, that was 3 years ago. That's what the public wanted 3 years ago. Actually, it's what they didn't want 3 years ago. Rick and I were fortunate enough to get elected. So from my perspective, the issues have changed, the times have changed, the topics have changed, the election issues have changed, everything has changed. And we can be a big city too. We can be like Hamilton. I've often heard that said, and it's on this floor as well. We can take the changes that we haven't necessarily taken on in the past. We can change our procedures. We can change our city hall. We can change our way of dealing with a number of different topics. We can change all those things, but changing to become a bit of a more of an open democratic process to more candidates from more areas in the city for more reasons, with plenty of time for second thought. The applications, as I understand it, would come through first. The elevator speech, as Tanya mentioned, is about the delivery, the person who makes the delivery, that's connected to the information that we received earlier. There's plenty of room for second thought, sober second thought, sober third thought, and entertaining a process that we haven't necessarily done before is not anti-democratic. It's a new approach. And I'm going to be supporting it, obviously.
Councillor Martin, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some people have said that this isn't democratic. Well, we're not operating in a democracy. We're operating in a representative democracy. The people of Brantford elected us to represent them, and it's our decisions that move things forward. If we were in a true democracy, we wouldn't even be here. We'd have a referendum on every issue that come forward. That would be extremely expensive and wouldn't get us very far. So I think representative democracy is a far better way to operate than do everything by referendum. If we even had somewhat of a representative or a proper democracy, I would have been able to get some referendum items put on ballot years ago. Before Councillor McCurry got on, I couldn't get a seconder, and once Councillor McCurry got on, we moved and seconded, but that was it. There was nobody else supported true democracy by putting an item to a referendum vote. So what we have to realize is that as a representative democracy, the people have their say through us. And if people want to lobby us, either for or against somebody, if my constituents want me to support a particular individual coming forward, they can call me and let me know, and I'll take that into consideration in my decision. And it's been questioned that we shouldn't have a blind vote on this. That's absolutely sacrosanct in our democracy. The secrecy of the ballot is paramount. When you vote in a federal election, in a provincial election, and a municipal election, you have the right that nobody else knows how you vote. You're free to tell people how you vote if you wish, but they have no right to know how you voted if you don't want them to. So to suggest that this shouldn't be a blind vote goes against the very democracy that you say that we're going against with this resolution. So I think you need to be cognizant of the fact that we're not in a democracy, we're in a representative democracy. And it's the representatives of the people that will make this decision, just like we make decisions every council meeting, every committee of the whole meeting. And not everybody agrees, but the majority of the council rules. And that's what this process does.
Yeah, I haven't spoken, so I'm glad you made that point, Councillor Martin. Representative democracy, that's exactly what we are. Otherwise, we just have referendums on everything. But I think more importantly, the guidance we can derive through. So I can speak with a little bit of knowledge here because I was on council in the 80s, and there were 3 instances where we appointed over 2 terms. One had been the 3rd place finish. That was Paula Banowitz, and 2 were appointed. It was Chris Brown and Bob Taylor. And then prior to that, in the earlier 80s, there was Enid Green and Joe Newman and Joe Brennan, sorry. And then of course we had the recent example from 2006 of Mr. Callanan. And so it's been a mix. My experience has been whether it's taking the 3rd place finisher or whether you have the appointment process. And the appointment process is well established across the province. Hamilton's doing it, Barrie's doing it. We've done it here in this city many times. And it's usually, my experience been, it's a function of how long it's been since the last election, how close you are to the next election, factors like that. And I tend to agree with Councillor Vanderstel. I mean, this election was 3 years ago, and the world has changed since then. And so that was a relevant consideration, certainly in the 1980s when there were for 2 of those that went by appointment. So I think it's unfair to say it's undemocratic. It's provided in the Municipal Act. Our councils, prior councils have done this. Other municipalities are doing this. Certainly the process that's been designed here by Councillor McCreary and working with our clerk staff it's almost exactly modeled on Barrie and Hamilton, and it's intended to be transparent. I come to it looking for the best qualified candidate. And maybe that's the 3rd place finisher from 3 years ago. Certainly that would be an asset to him, and I'm assuming he would apply for it. So those are my views. It's not contrary to what certainly our own history in this city, done on many occasions. So I think Councillor McCreary, you're next.
Mayor, I have my hand up to wrap once everyone else has declined the speaking opportunity.
Okay. So, sorry, Councillor Wall. Yeah, you've only spoken once, Councillor Wall.
Thank you. If we vote on this tonight and it passes, is that it? There's no further discussion or opportunity to discuss or consider this item?
Yeah, that's correct. And I think, Madam Clerk, don't I understand we have to get some candidate in place by we have to fill it by December 25th. So there are timelines imposed on us by the municipal. So.
Through the mayor, yes, I can confirm you do have a 60-day requirement, which would be land on December 25th. There is some processes that are required to undertake to execute that.
Yeah, sorry.
What happens if we don't? What happens if we don't fill the position? What are the repercussions?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wall, I'm not sure I can speak about repercussions, but certainly the act does not permit you to leave it vacant at this time. So the choices before you are to either go through an appointment process, which means the individual needs to consent to said appointment, which would be facilitated through this process that you're considering tonight, or by way of a by-election. Those are your 2 choices that are before you legally.
So I'm receiving correspondence right now with concerns that somebody who doesn't live in the city of Brantford could, as long as they met the criteria that was stated, they own property here, they don't have to live here, they just have to own property here, could run. Is it within the municipality's power or this council's power to change that? Could we make it so that it was mandatory that you are a citizen and property owner in Brantford? I'm asking specifically for the constituent.
Through the mayor, to my knowledge, no, because you would need to have met the threshold of an eligible elector to be a candidate. But that would be my initial thought answer in this moment. And the requirement is set out in the Municipal Elections Act and not within the power of the municipality to change.
If an election were to happen, would it be an election that was specific to Ward 1 and only residents of Ward 1 could vote?
It would be only for the vacant position. And yes, so that would be a Ward 1 councillor. So that is true.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, all right, Councillor McCreary.
I see Councillor Carpenter's ahead of me in the queue, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Carpenter, go ahead.
The clerks, first of all, for procedure ruling, Do we have a position for rep, where a member of council can demand that they're last and rep? I don't believe that's a procedural bylaw, but could you clarify that for me?
Well, it's a custom that we often.
I'm asking the clerk, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, it is included in your procedural bylaw that the member who moved the original motion may wrap the speaking opportunity of the respective motion. So yes, it is included in your procedural bylaw.
Thank you. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thank you.
So go ahead, Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate that. When you had talked about the province saying we had to fill it within 6 days, does the province say we actually have to finish filling it in 60 days? So we'd have to have an election within 60 days if we did an election? Or do we have to have a process to fill it within 60 days?
Through the mayor. So if you choose the appointment route, that has to be solidified within 60 days. If you choose the the by-election portion of the process, then that has different dates that are associated with it.
And what are those dates? Important for the public to know.
Certainly. So if you were to choose to go down the by-election route and you directed me by way of bylaw in order to execute those elections, execute the election, we choose a nomination day, and then the election day is 45 days after that. High level, I would say that would be in and around mid-March when that election would occur based on working backwards from the timeline.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted the public to know that we didn't have till December 25th to fill the position. The only option, I wanted them to know what our options were, because they're not going to have an opportunity to comment on what we're doing here. We've done this a lot this term where we push things through. And I guess we're concerned about the timelines, that December 25th, I get that. I can't support.
Whatever, point of order. Push things through is not appropriate. We don't push things through. We're
appropriate for me, thank you. It's my time.
It implies that we're not following the rules by which we're bound. It implies that we're rushing. I'm not rushing. I take personal offense to that comment. I'm not rushing anything.
And you're entitled to, thank you.
Yep, sorry, we're not going to be banter back and forth, but you're characterizing the actions of certain council members, and I think you owe an apology, Councillor Carpenter.
No, I don't, thank you. I'm just saying that
I challenge that.
Public will suggest.
So, Councillor Carpenter, are you not going to apologize?
No, I'm not. There's an integrity commissioner, he can file a complaint.
Right.
If
But I also
pushing things through is a concern, then I guess you can file a complaint. Rushing things through, is that too? We have a timeline. The public wants to know what we're doing, and we're not including the public in any of our decision-making process, at least this one. We haven't violated anything. We're just seeing.
Point of order, Mayor Davis, is this meeting not open to the public? Is this not a public meeting? Are there not delegates?
All right, let's.
Is this a public meeting?
Can I have the floor? Do I have the floor, or am I being violated?
Just a second. I have had a point of order, and I have to rule on it, Councillor Carpenter. So, Councillor Wall, that's really not a point of order.
So he said this is not a public meeting. It's not true. It's a public meeting. It's a public meeting.
Yeah.
This meeting's open to the public.
All right.
It's a lie.
I think that's rather obvious. So, Councillor Carpenter, would you please proceed to finish your comment?
Thank you. I'd appreciate not being interrupted again.
I'd appreciate you not lying and take your office
Councillor
seriously.
Wall,
No, that requires an apology. Someone just said I was lying.
Yeah, you have to apologize for that, Councillor Wall.
Has it been proven that he is not? Is there proof? Is there an allegation? What's Mayor?
I
Congratulations.
really do appreciate
We
being
completely
ganged up
lost
on
track.
Yeah. I would exert order. So I'm going to say this to Councillor Carpenter, to Councillor Wall, you can file integrity complaint. So let's finish your comments, please.
And I will do just that. Thank you. Just to say forward, when we talked about appointments of council and elections, Councillor Bob Taylor, who was a commissioner, was the first time I ever ran for office. I ran then against Councillor Bob Taylor for the Public Utilities Commission. Great man, Bob Taylor. Bob Taylor, the NDP swept the power unexpectedly, I think, and Bob Taylor lobbied members of council. He told me who he lobbied, and he lobbied members of council and was appointed, like anybody could lobby. And he was appointed at that time to city council. And I know that there was some work there. anyways, the appointment process from the Public Utilities Commission, they appointed Councillor Carpenter as the newest commissioner to the Public Utilities Commission because they got 49% of the vote, because they knocked on doors. And it would be not correct of me to not support voting for the incumbent that finished third in that race, because that's exactly how I came to office. And I've been in office ever since. And I think it's important. You know, we're on the eve of Remembrance Day, you know, the most democratic day of our history. Every year we should be remembering democracy, and it's important that democracy means involving the public. And I heard the comments, well, we could just have a referendum if we're going to do that. It doesn't hurt to ask the public what they think. That's what we should be doing. That's our job. And I'm quite tired of being beaten up every time I come here and I raise that issue. And I really want fairness from the chair. Thank you.
All right, Councillor McCreary, you're next. You're doing the wrap.
Mayor, thank you very much. Let me first remind everybody that we're filling the shoes of a leader. And I'm going to speak briefly about leadership. And I don't wish to sound vain, but Councillor Vanderstelt and I have taken the lead on this issue. We've consulted with a lot of members of council, gotten some opinion back. And quite frankly, Mayor, it's very distressing to me and to other members of council that the final vote on a prior issue quite some time ago still continues to color what happens in this room and in this community. I grow
Point of
tired
order.
of
I believe that's going off topic for a wrap up on getting a nominated position.
I also call point of order on that.
I will use my 5 minutes to speak to this, and I
Point of order. I would like that withdrawn.
Yeah. Councillor McCreary, are you going to, I'm going to rule that point of order. I'm not sure that it's out of order. I don't think it is. I mean, we've had Councillor Carpenter was making the same kind of comments, and so it's given the tenor of the debate on this one, it's totally in order, I believe.
I will say to Councillor Van Tilburg that I am not including him in my categorization, if that helps.
All right, can you stop the back and forth? There's a point of order, it can be challenged. If you
Yes,
just continue to conclude with your comments, please.
Perhaps everybody that wants to interrupt me could do so now, and then I'll proceed. Thank you. So, okay, folks, you know, we've got to put the last fights behind us and move on to issues that are here. You don't like what's being done tonight, maybe take the initiative now and again and bring issues forward like this and take the lead on these items, okay? What's before us tonight is perfectly legitimate. You know, folks want to grandstand and backslap and do all these things. Let's just stick to the issue and debate the issue. You've got some serious concerns. I see that some members of council have. Some members of council have minor concerns. But what remains for us to do here is to recognize our responsibility to fill this position. And it's a great responsibility, as we hear every time we meet as a council. It's a great responsibility we accept here. We're going to be responsible, the 9 or 10 of us, for filling a spot that's ordinarily decided by more than 1,000 people. It's a great responsibility. Let's embrace that. As Councillor Martin said, talk to your constituents about what they want to see in a successful candidate here. Go to them and find out. And if you're completely uncomfortable with what we're going to do tonight and you don't like the process going forward, then when it comes time to debate this on that Saturday, take the day off. If democracy is such an affront on that date that you can't participate, I'm sure we can get by in your absence, okay? But what we're doing tonight is the right and proper thing. It is democratic in the sense that the group of us that decides to be there on that Saturday are democratically choosing somebody to fill a vacancy. And it is a great responsibility, okay? So let's get with the program. Let's all try to pull together, okay? That was one thing that Councillor Weaver did in his time on council and his term and a half, was to go to councillors and try to get their opinions and try to make part of what happens in this room their own, right? We've tried to do this with some. If you feel you're left out of some of the processes here, maybe you ought to look in the mirror and try to understand why that is, okay? Let's try to be team players. There's a team here. You can certainly make these items your own. You can certainly amend them and go forward. But quite frankly, I've just had it with folks that just want to throw rocks at what's going on in this room and throw rocks at people that take the initiative and the leadership that they feel is appropriate to be doing in this community, Mayor. Thank you very much. And I would hope that everybody can find it in their hearts to support this tonight.
All right. So we'll proceed to the vote. If we can have the resolution, please, Madam Clerk.
This is a vote on the amendment, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, Madam Clerk, on C3. So that calls for a meeting on a Saturday, is that correct?
Through to you, Mayor. Yes, it does call for a meeting on a Saturday.
All right, and that would require, because I believe our rules of procedure require that most meetings be Monday to Friday, is that correct?
That is correct. There is a reference in the procedure by that for committee of the whole for strategic planning, but not for a special council meeting.
Right. So I think we probably have to deal with that separately. So what I'll do is I'll call the vote then on C through to including 1, 2, 4, and leaving the issue of December 11th, 9 a.m. to be dealt with on a separate vote. So, Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Just to clarify, these are all clauses minus clause C3, which is in relation to the date. Thank you. Please excuse my typo, but that has carried on a recorded vote of 7-3. Those in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter and Toski Van Tilborg. So it does receive the 2/3 for a deviation from the procedural bylaw. So just my apologies, I misspoke there. That was all clauses minus C3. So we still need to do C3 before we do the as amended. My apologies in that reading.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, so that's C3, which is essentially having the meeting take place on a Saturday as opposed to during the week.
Clause C3 has carried on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Van Tilborg, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter, Councillor Toski. That does receive the 2/3 required for a deviation.
All right, so the resolution has now been amended. Any further discussion? Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Earlier during the debate and the discussion, I was asked to apologize. I would like to apologize to Councillor Carpenter and to my fellow colleagues on council for my behavior. I am very passionate. That is no excuse for my behavior and for breaking our rules and decorum, and I'm sorry for my behavior.
All right, with that, I'd call the vote then on the resolution as amended.
Item 13.1 being the declaration of a vacancy on City Council has carried on a recorded vote of 7-3. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillors Carpenter and Toski Van Tilborg.
All right, let's proceed then to item 13.2, which is a resolution of the special city in camera meeting held on October the 12th. And so, Councillor Sless, I understand that you're going to move that. If you would please move it, identify your seconder and read it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Utley, that the acquisition of Unit 2, 150 Coburn Street, described as Brant Standard Condominium Plan 20 for the sum of $300,000 by the Corporation of the City of Brantford be approved. and that the required sale bylaw be presented to City Council for adoption, and the purchase be funded from the Capital Levy Reserve RFO 573.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, if you can take the vote on that.
Item 13.2 being the resolution from special city in camera meeting held on October 12, 2021 regarding Harmony Square office space acquisition has carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, we'll move to the next item, which is item 13.3, which is the CAO COVID emergency update. I believe Councillor Van Tilburg, you're the mover of that. If you would please confirm that, identify your seconder, and read the resolution.
Well, I don't have that information, but let's see. Moved by myself, seconded by my ward mate, that report 2021-769 titled CAO COVID-19 Emergency Update 10/26/21 be received.
All right, any discussion on that? Seeing none, if I can call the vote on that, please.
Item 13.3 being the CAO COVID-19 emergency update for October 26, 2021 is carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, let's deal to move to item 13.4, which is in reference to Hardy Road land exchange. And I believe Councillor Martin, you've got that. If you would please identify your seconder and read the resolution.
Certainly, I'm the mover and Councillor McCurry is the seconder. And it reads, A, that the city enter into an agreement of purchase and sale with Telephone City Aggregates to the satisfaction in form to legal counsel and in content to the manager of real estate services. That includes A, disposition of city lands to be transferred to TCA, referred to as the railway lands, being part lot 20-21 concession Brantford City, as in A 404118, except part 2 and 4, 2R 5083 Brantford City, being all of PIN 32275-0152. B, acquisition TCA lands transferred to city, referred to as the wood lot, being part lot 20-21, concession 3, Brantford City, as in Alpha 519384, except Alpha 131322, A 131323, Brantford City, being all of the PIN 32275-0154. Consideration. I, railway lands valued at $865,580. 2, woodlot lands valued at $826, $72.84. And 3, results in a net payment to the city of $38,507.16. Additional conditions. 1, TCA to provide the city a waiver satisfactory to legal counsel of any rights outstanding to the agreement between the city and TCA pursuant to Section 30 of the Expropriation Act, and 2, each party bear their own costs.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, let's take the vote on that.
Item 13.4 being the resolution from special city council and camera meeting held on October 26, 2021 regarding Hardy Road land exchange with Telephone City Aggregates has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis.
All right, we'll move to notices of motion. Understand there's one, and that would be Councillor Antosky. If you'd read the title.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just get it up. The title is Endorsement of Additional Long-Term Care Beds at John Noble Home.
You might have another resolution or notice of motion that.
Yes, I do.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, I
Thank
think you do. It's parking spots.
Thank you, Mayor. It is the memorialization of the Walter Gretzky parking spot at Wayne Gretzky Sports Center.
All right, so let's move into bylaws then. So I believe, Councillor Wall, you've got the motion for first and second reading of the bylaws. So if you please do that, state your seconder, and then read the resolution.
Yeah, moved by myself, seconded by my ward mate, Councillor Van Tilburg, that leave be given to the mover and seconder to introduce the following bylaws first and second reading. And you want me to read these, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, you got it. Sorry. 199-2021 bylaw to authorize the execution of agreements individually dated and listed in Schedule A attached here to lease and option to purchase agreement between the Corporation of the City of Brantford and Brant Community Healthcare System regarding the lands municipally loaned as 311 St. Paul Avenue and 225 Terrace Hill Street in the City of Brantford. Confidential minutes of settlement for assessment appeals. 200-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 37-83 bylaw being a bylaw to regulate traffic in the City of Brantford. Various locations, Schedule 1 through Highway, Schedule 2 yield right-of-way signs. Committee of the Whole Operations Administrative Report. 201-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 144-88 being a bylaw to regulate parking in the City of Brantford. 202-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 37-83 being a bylaw to regulate traffic in the City of Brantford. 203-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 70-2010 being a bylaw to adopt various City of Brantford policies and to create a corporate policy manual by repealing and replacing corporate policy 028, appointment of citizen members to City of Brantford boards and advisory committees, task force, and other committees to which council makes appointments. 204-2021 bylaw to amend Chapter 26 boards and committee duties, functions of the City of Brantford Municipal Code. 205-2021 bylaw to amend Chapter 15 procedure of the City of Brantford Municipal Code. 206-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 160-90 being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the location and use of buildings and structures in the City of Brantford. 207-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 160-90 being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the location and use of buildings and structures in the City of Brantford. 208-2021 bylaw to amend County of Brant bylaw number 61-16 as it affects the annex area described in an order made under the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 C-25 City of Brantford, County of Brant, dated December 13th, 2016. 209-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 52-2021 being a bylaw to fix fees and charges to be collected by the Corporation of the City of Brantford for 2021. 210-2021 bylaw to amend the municipal code of the City of Brantford by adopting Chapter 261 development charges and to repeal bylaw 103-2021 being a bylaw to establish Chapter 262 area specific development charges 2021-588. 211-2021 bylaw to approve the purchase of certain lands in the premise within the City of Brantford, Harmony Square. 212-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 160-90 being a bylaw to regulate the use of lands and the location and use of buildings and structures within the City of Brantford, removal of holding H provision. 213-2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 144-88 being a bylaw to regulate parking in the City of Brantford, Mary Street, Schedule 26 accessible zone. 214, 2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 144-88 being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford, Latzer Crescent, Schedule 7, parking prohibited at any time. 215, 2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 144-88 being a bylaw to regulate parking in the city of Brantford, Westlake Boulevard, Schedule 7, parking prohibited at any time. 216, 2021 bylaw to amend bylaw 70-2010 being a bylaw to adopt various city of Brantford policies and to create a corporate policy manual by amending corporate policy 10 delegation of authority policy 2021-636. 217, 2021 being a bylaw to approve the acquisition and disposition of certain lands and premises within the city of Brantford, telephone city aggregates 2021-530. 218, 2021 bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the city of Brantford with respect to the meeting held on October 26th, 2021.
Is there any wish to have any of these separated for discussion purposes? So Councillor Carpenter, if you give me the bylaw number.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, bylaw 205 and bylaw 211, the second to be separated for first and second and third reading, please, just for the vote.
Sure, we'll make that consistent through there. Councillor Vanderstel.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 208, 2021 separated for the same reasons all the way through. Thank you.
All right, let's deal then with these separated. So we'll deal with bylaw. Sorry, does anybody else want anything separated? See, Councillor Carpenter, is there some other bylaw you wanted separated? Just
205 and 211, I believe.
yeah, just your hand was still up. I didn't know whether you had wanted something else. Anyways, let's move to separate vote then. First and second reading of bylaw 205. Which is the process review task report. We'll go individually. So 205 right now.
Councillor Wall, just waiting on your response.
Sorry, my system is frozen again. Yes.
I'll mark you as in favor for bylaw 205. The first and second reading of bylaw 205-2021 is carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, let's go to bylaw 208. That's the short-term rental accommodation.
Just a note for the clarification for that item, there is a secondary bylaw 207 that is the same topic. So Councillor Vanderstel would just like to confirm that both those bylaws would have your conflict associated, 207 and 208.
Yeah, so let's deal with those separately. We'll vote on them together as a package, 207 and 208.
Certainly. Bylaws 207 and 208 on first and second reading have carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, and Toski Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis, noting Councillor Vanderstel's conflict.
All right, let's move to bylaw 211.
First and second reading for bylaw 211 has carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstel, Utley, Sless, McCurry, Martin, and Toski Van Tilburg, while Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
All right, if we then go to the balance of the bylaws first and second reading. Those that weren't separated.
First and second reading of all remaining bylaws have carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Slash, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
All right, Councillor McCurry, you've got the resolution for third and final reading of the bylaws.
If you say so, Mayor, I move, seconded by Councillor Martin, that all those bylaws be moved and approved a second and third time. Thank you.
Yeah, third time. It's 199 through to 218. And we will take out 205 and 211. We'll vote on them separately as a package. Those are the ones Councillor Carpenter asked, and 208 and 207 being the ones Councillor Vanderstelt. Are there any other third reading bylaws that anybody wants separate for discussion purposes? Not seeing that. All right, let's take 205 and 211 first, the third reading.
The third reading of bylaws 205 and 211 have carried on a recorded vote of 9-1. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Slash, McCurry, Martin, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis. Those opposed, Councillor Carpenter.
Likewise, bylaws 207, 208, third reading.
The third reading of bylaws 207 and 208 have carried on a recorded vote of 9-0. Those voting in favor, Councillor Utley, Slash, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis, noting Councillor Vanderstelt's conflict.
And the balance of the bylaws for third reading.
The third reading of all remaining bylaws have carried on a recorded vote. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Vanderstelt. Let me restart that. I had still had marked you absent. My apologies.
Thanks for that catch, Tanya.
The third and final reading of all remaining bylaws has carried on a recorded vote of 10-0. Those voting in favor, Councillors Vanderstelt, Utley, Slash, McCurry, Martin, Carpenter, Antosky, Van Tilburg, Wall, Mayor Davis.
Okay, while I sign the bylaws, we'll go to ward announcements, starting just following the gallery here counterclockwise. Councillor Martin.
Just remember that to watch out on Sunday for little ghouls and ghosts and minions and zombies, because they got maximum candy collection on their mind. They're not worried about traffic safety, so it's up to drivers to be on the lookout for the little ones on Halloween. Thank you.
Councillor Antosky.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say the same thing as Councillor Martin. Also paying attention leading up to, because many of our farms and our businesses are running events leading up to, and same thing, you know, kids are having fun getting together for, in some cases, you know, it's been a long time. And so just watch outside any of those businesses that are running events running up to Halloween. And it'll be fun to have a fun event in our neighborhoods.
Councillor Wall.
Yeah, the same comments. That honestly, I mean, I say every meeting, our neighborhood associations are doing so much for this community, and they have continued to do so much for this community, especially throughout the pandemic, just keeping people connected about what's going on in their neighborhood, what's going on, trying to do virtual programs. Councillor Carpenter had very kind words to say about the neighborhood committees earlier and the kind of people that they attract and who volunteer. And I would just encourage people to get to know their neighbors, get to know their community, drive slowly and safely in our neighborhoods out there. And especially now with Halloween just around the corner, yeah, look out for all the kids that are out, and, you know, try to keep safe as people are going around to the doors. And yeah, support local businesses too, because they need it. But I mean, it's rhetoric at this point. But honestly, the East Ward Echo Place Neighborhood Association, Eagle Place Community Association, and the Downtown Central Neighborhood Association, they're great people doing great things. And honestly, I couldn't say enough kind things about them. And I'm sure every other neighborhood association is great too. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the Myrtleville and the Mayfair neighborhood associations are inviting everybody in the city to go to Myrtleville House Museum on Myrtleville Drive on Saturday evening at 6. They're hosting a spooky time there, and there's goodies for the kids, and they're hoping to, it'll be a safe event, but they're hoping that the city will join them there and let the kids have some fun. So that's on Saturday night at 6 o'clock at Myrtleville House Museum on Myrtleville Drive. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McCreary.
Mayor, thank you very much. I'll remind members of the public that we did accept Councillor Weaver's resignation this evening, and I would suggest that if there are members of the public that would like to pass on their best wishes to Councillor Weaver, he no longer has a City of Brantford account, but if you pass them on to members of council, we can forward them to ensure that he receives your message, and I'm sure he'd be most pleased to do so. Secondly, Mayor, I'd like to remind folks watching at home that we are in the midst of deliberating the Downtown Improvement Task Force. Councillor Wall and I are Vice Chair and Chair respectively, and Councillor Vandersloot, Councillor Van Tilburg, and Councillor Rutling are heading up side tables, which are dealing with social issues in the downtown, economic issues, and crime issues. We did hold our public engagement, which was not terribly well attended. And I would like to suggest that if members of the public have some suggestions or ideas to share with us, they can certainly pass them on to Councillor Wall or myself by way of email, which allows a little more anonymity that the public process does. Lastly, Mayor, we debated this a little while ago, but I would like to extend an invitation to anyone in this community who's interested in pursuing the opportunity of applying for the seat in Ward 1, which has been vacated by Rick, to get in touch with the clerk and get the exact details of what you need to do. It's going to happen over the next few weeks, and certainly everybody is entitled and able to apply for the position should they meet the criteria. It is a completely open and democratic process, and everybody that applies will receive due consideration on the day that we do hear from the candidates and make our decision.
Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was mentioned earlier with the thanks of the East Ward Echo Place Neighborhood Association, Councillor Antosky and I held a ward meeting regarding crime and traffic issues within Ward 4. Together, Councillor Antosky and I and our partners delivered 4,000 flyers to mailboxes. We had one of the most successful ward meetings ever seen in the city of Brantford under COVID. In fact, we had 80 people participating in the discussion, and we had many more than that watching on YouTube and still watching on YouTube. I was invited to the Police Services Board meeting. Cheryl and I both were, but we had dual meetings. So Cheryl took the planning one and I took the Police Services Board one. where the police chief made a presentation to police service reports saying how successful the next few days were and how successful the meeting was. In fact, I want to thank all the residents of East Ward and Echo Place and the East Ward and Echo Place Neighbor Association, because that meeting was so successful, so polite, and the information was so succinct that the police were able to catch a lot of people that were running stop signs, write a lot of speeding tickets the next day specifically, which would reduce the number of resources they needed to use, because they could pinpoint the resources exactly as was commented. And the chief was thanking both Councillor Tusky and I, but really the thanks goes to the ward constituents and East Ward Echo Place Neighborhood Association that was involved. I want to say to that neighborhood association as well that we have met with the transportation department and Cheryl and I, and we will come back with what the recommendations will be for resolving many of the issues on traffic and speed issues holistically within that part of Ward 4, East Ward and Echo Place. So thank you all for a very successful meeting. And if any members of council would like to know what the process was and how it was so successful, we're happy to share that with you. And that was the recommendation of the police chief. Thank you.
Councillor Ratley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for a short message here that be safe and have fun on Halloween. And Councillor Slass, thank you for the reminder on Myrtleville. It's just 1 block away from me, so I'll be going up there for some candy. Thank you.
Councillor Banerjee.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As a result of Councillor Weaver's resignation and the vote tonight, please continue to contact me. As Councillor McCurry said, Councillor Weaver's email address is no longer active. If you're wondering why you're not getting a reply, please contact me for at least the next 60 days, if not 90. At janvanderstel.ca, my goodness, at Brantford.ca. And, you know, if you are one of the people who want and are interested in serving the constituents of Ward 1, don't be discouraged by what you saw tonight. 26 people are watching, 10 of you I know. This is not normal for our meeting to have progressed in this fashion. Actually, it's quite abnormal. These are difficult times and difficult issues with difficult things. Don't be dissuaded. Please put your name forward. If you've ever wanted to serve in this capacity, the benefits far outweigh the negative components of this kind of service. I highly recommend it to anyone who seriously wants to serve. So that'll be happening immediately. We'll be going through that process. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family members, spread the word. It is a wonderful capacity in which to serve, everything else put aside. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And one last, I don't normally make ward announcements, but tonight I am dressed in purple because tomorrow is Purple Day. And that's a day that celebrates the important work done by Children's Aid Societies across Ontario and how important it is we have those organizations to support them as they protect and support those children in our communities that are vulnerable. So with that, call a conclusion to tonight's meeting.